What's up, people? Welcome to a brand new edition of the Eastern Lariat. I am Dylan Fox. Welcome to year 10 of the show, as we discussed last week. Although not year 10 of me. I do want to thank all the people that reached out to me, and I'm sure Striga got a lot of great comments too about our episode last week, celebrating 10 years since he started the show. But my 10-year anniversary, I do want to clarify, is not until April. I was still a listener to the original show, as I said last week. But it's still obviously being a part of the show so long. I was so proud and happy for Strig that he got to celebrate that. And this is not a typical edition of the Eastern Lariat. This is a show that I've done and we have done for a number of years now in a row, and it is all about the Wrestling Observer newsletter Hall of Fame issue, which is very much in vogue for everybody to talk about right now. And I really wanted to talk about it because I'm a huge fan of wrestling history, and I wanted to make sure that we always have our little say in things, obviously. And to do that, once again, just like the years prior, I am very happy and very proud to have on my friend, who was my friend for a long time, now many years at this point, as well as a Hall of Fame voter for numerous years as well. And we all know and love him for that. I, of course, am talking about one half of the Emerald Flowshow, a show that I have been blessed enough to guest host on a number of times. He is all the way up in Canada. He is Gerard di Trolio. Gerard, you are back on the Eastern Lariat, and you are here to talk about the Hall of Fame. How are you feeling, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back to this, Dylan. And I know the last couple times that I've listened to the Eastern Lariat, you keep mentioning, my name in the same sentence as Shota Kafuji. So I'm here to talk about Shota Kafuji for the next 4 hours. How does that sound?
That's true. And we know that you can write in and email in to Dave and get people put on the Hall of Fame ballot. So are you saying that Kofuji's been kind of a snub right now? Is that where we're starting this off at?
No, definitely not. But
maybe one day.
Maybe one day. We'll see. But I appreciate you recognizing my respect for that young talent, and I think I'm going to be proven correct.
I do. I agree with that completely. I've always liked Kofuji as well, but you really stood on 10 toes down on him from the beginning, and I really appreciate that you have that passion. It was like me with, well, I guess a lot of my guys, like, it's always up and down. I was 10 toes down on Yoshihashi when he was a rookie. Okay, I liked him before anybody else. Go back to the Eastern Lariat 10 years ago. I mentioned that on here. You will hear me big up Yoshihashi when everyone else thought he sucked. And look who had the last laugh on that. But with Kofuji, I think he's actually pretty popular among all Japan fans. So I think you definitely will be proven right. And on top of it, can I give a big shout out to Canada right now?
Sure.
And by Canada, I mean America's team playing in the World Series, the Toronto Blue Jays, as we all root for them to heroically triumph over the Dodgers and that horrible franchise that we all want to see lose, even in America.
Everybody hates the Dodgers.
Yes. Well, it's just they are the evil empire of baseball. They're kind of like the WWE of baseball. They have all the most money. I guess they'd be more like TKO. They signed all these amazing free agents.
Or like Yankees most other decades.
Yeah. But it's usually the Yankees. But for some reason, it kind of flipped to the Dodgers. And Ohtani's making enough for like 10 teams on his own. But with all of the merchandise he sells, he's basically made it all back anyway. So it was a good investment on their part. I think we all wish that we had him on our baseball teams. Shout out to the Cubs. We fell much earlier in the playoffs than the World Series, but it was a fun season, and I do appreciate that. So we've got the spirit of the Blue Jays on this episode, and hopefully that doesn't mean we lose.
I'm old enough. I was pretty young. I was like 7 and 8, but I remember still very vividly the Blue Jays in the '92 and the '93 World Series. That was a very formative moment for a young Gerard.
Legendary moment there, overall. Yeah. Isn't it crazy that, like, every team has won the championship in Toronto except for the Leafs, like the hockey team.
Well, I mean, yeah, we're going on almost 60 years.
Yeah, I mean they have won it. It was just a
Yeah,
long time ago.
yeah,
But the Raptors won a few years ago with
yeah.
Kawhi.
2019.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Legendary run. Everybody loved him. Loved to see Mark Gasol, Memphis like native, getting a ring
right.
there. And the Jays, like you said, 92 with Carter. That's like a legendary World Series. I wasn't around for that, of course, but I saw the highlight videos because baseball loves history, and
Yeah.
that's what makes it one of the best sports. And actually, it's funny. We're doing this Hall of Fame show, and Dave has said a number of times he bases the Hall of Fame around the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yes, that's very true.
And thankfully we don't have anyone. I mean, there are some voters that are harsh. I don't think anyone's been as bad as the guy who didn't vote Ichiro into the Hall of Fame. Overall, like imagine a wrestling version of that. How hated this man would be, whoever would do such a thing in the wrestling context. And that guy was hated too, even in the baseball context, to be fair. But regardless, um, so much going on in the world of the Hall of Fame, and because we are the Eastern Lariat, and Japan is our specialty. And we're Flowshow. Obviously, your show is all about Japan. I think it's only right we talk about Japan first.
Of course.
And you've been around for a few times now. Pretty much every year you come back and we go over some of these candidates we've talked about a few times at this point.
Yes.
And I don't want to rehash totally old news before, but for a brief method, I know we've got some new listeners lately, and thanks to the evergreen appearance that I had on your show last month and on the Voices of Wrestling Network, I had some new people message me saying, "Hey, I'm going to give your show a chance because I heard you on the show." So, the power of VOW coming at it again, and they've done some Hall of Fame shows on their Patreon too.
Yes, they
really
have.
good.
I was on last year for the Japan.
Yeah, and this year they mentioned that they wanted to get some different people on, and my man Tony Richards was on. One, I'm a big fan of his.
That was very good. Yes, I never heard him before.
Yeah, I followed him. Well, we follow each other on Twitter, and I've read his stuff on his Substack before, and he's like super knowledgeable on there. Yeah, he's not just some guy they just found randomly.
Yes.
But he's very knowledgeable. The people they've had on up and down, not just you, and not just him, and not just people I know. Case has been on theirs before.
Yeah.
Like everybody they've had on is really like they belong to be talking about this, and that's one of the things I said the very first year me and you did it, because the first year we did the Hall of Fame, it was me and Case. I had Case on that year, and the thing that it's amazing how long this goes. You've forgotten this completely. Clearly, this was a few years ago, to be fair. But like with you guys, I love that this generation of voters really puts their best foot forward, I feel like, because I know how much research that you've done in it in the past. You didn't just get it and were just kind of like working your way through it pretty much. And I don't mean like working, I mean like the wrestling working your way through it. And you just kind of made some guesses if you saw a name. Because I know that there's some people out there that, even Meltzer himself at times a lot of times the fans will get angrier about certain things than he will, even if he disagrees with it. But I really think you guys really go out of your way to make things the best they can be for this Hall of Fame. And I do appreciate that.
Well, I think we are response because like I know like I've gotten people on the ballot and so has Case.
That's awesome. Yeah,
I think you can figure out who Case got on the ballot.
Well, I don't want to speculate. I'm sure they were very well deserving. I trust you guys for sure there. But I'm going to give a brief breakdown to anybody who maybe isn't familiar with the Observer Hall of Fame. Obviously, it's really recognized by a lot of the deep diving type of fans. People have been around the block and done research and all of that as one of the, if not the most legit fames. Obviously, a big part of this is there's some rules to these candidates that get brought up. First of all, you got to be 35 years old, or at least be somebody who was wrestling for 15 years. That has been mentioned too before. The Hall of Fame started in 96. It was basically Meltzer and some guys, like I know John Williams was a part of that, but like some people came up with this list to induct people. And then every year after that, we've had the voting base determine some things as well on there. So, you got to be this certain age or at least have a lot of experience in wrestling to be nominated in the first place. Every category, there's a maximum number of votes, which I will list when we go through them, of course. That keeps things to where you can't just vote every single candidate in the category. Of course, it's broken down into different ones: historical, modern, Japan, Mexico, the rest of the world, which is listed on the ballot as Europe, Australia, New Zealand, the Pacific Islands, and Africa. And then non-wrestlers, which also count towards different candidates. For example, when we talk about people like your Jesse Ventura's, Ted Turner's, Tony Schiavone's, they count for the U.S. modern, and Ventura counts for the historical actually, but Schiavone's on modern, Ted Turner's on modern, and there's guys for Japan like Koichi, Joe Higuchi, Bobby Bruns, and all that, like Rossi Ogawa. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but they all count towards their own categories overall. So you have to keep that in mind as well. It's not like you could just say, it's not like they list everybody and say yes, no, or abstain. That's not how the voting process works at the end of the day. If a candidate gets 60% of the votes, they get in, which we saw a number of people get in last year on there as well. So, like, last year was really one of the big breaking points. Also, if you get less than 10% of the vote, you get taken off the ballot, which also happened before with people. And sometimes it happens 2, maybe 3 times, and maybe it will happen again with Seth Rollins after this year. But coming in there. So you had a lot of people coming in at the moment. Last year, we saw a bunch of guys get in, including our man, who we advocated for on our show, Bobby Davis, the king of Wendy's,
Right.
of course, and one of the all-time great managers as well. That was not a category, I'm sure, but a legendary manager totally deserved to be in. Johnny Saint came in. That was a surprising one for me a little bit, I do have to say.
Yeah, well, I know why he's in there, even if I disagree.
Yeah, I didn't think he was a great candidate either, to be honest. Even though I am a fan of his work, he's a guy, I kind of compare him to like a Dean Malenko type of guy where, like, when he first came through the rounds, people declared him this god of wrestling, pretty much, like one of the best ever. And then everyone got annoyed with that, and then it turned the other way, where it's like, this guy sucks. Like, he can't even work at all. He was one of the worst. He was good, and great sometimes. But I didn't think he was that great of a candidate, even among his style.
I suspect every active wrestler between the ages of 35 and 45 voted for him.
And that's one of the things that he had. It's funny because he was number 2 among active wrestlers last year, and number 1 among number 1 among reporters though as well. So
was he really? Oh, I didn't realize that.
Interesting note there. Number 7 among retired wrestlers. Historians didn't rank in the top 30, so the historians didn't love him that much. Shima making the ballot last year. The legendary Glate wrestler, and also Dragon Gate and Toriumon as well. What'd you think of him getting in?
I think it's deserved because I think what he represents deserves some sort of recognition because only Ultimo is in there. But I suppose we could discuss philosophically like how many more Dragon Gate guys there.
It just so happens there is another one that got brought on the ballot, and we will discuss him very in depth in a bit. Speaking of Dragon Gate, Shingo, he got in. He's another one that his case was very interesting because he had the Dragon Gate, but he also has the New Japan run to balance it out as well. Between the two, did you vote for either of those? Did you like them, or are you?
I voted. Yeah, I voted for both of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's deserved overall. My big problem with Japan last year, I really have no problem with them getting in. My problem with them is that these guys, if you notice that the inductees, they had huge jumps up 20 and 30% and stuff like that. And that happened with a lot of people. And we were worried about, or I was worried about, is this year that we're going to talk about, there's a particular candidate that I'm incredibly afraid will get in because of this reasoning, where I'm starting to feel like the Japan region, after Ishii got in and Naito and these guys, I'm worried that maybe it'll be a next man up type of mentality where, I mean, we're going to talk about this bout, and if you've listened to other shows about the Japan region, it has been said that this is not the strongest year that it's been. A lot of these main icons have already gotten in at that point. So I'm just worried that maybe it'll be a next man up mentality. But Shingo and Shima, I think totally deserve it, actually. It's tough for Shima because his GLEAT run has kind of taken him out of everyone's memory in short order. But it also doesn't really take away all of the great things that he did in his career as well. You had Los Hermanos Dinamita coming in. They're another one where, and it's the story of Mexico. It feels like every year there's these amazing candidates on that there's just so many that nobody ever goes anywhere. Like, it's like they're always stuck at the same line. They finally got over the hump. They've been close a number of years before that. And they were number one among historians as well. So, Hermanos Dinamita, totally deserving to get in my opinion. We've got some other candidates we'll talk about in a little bit. You had Paul Orndorff getting in, Mr. Wonderful, after a roller coaster ride of a candidacy, like on the modern region. It felt like he should have been in a long time ago. I think that he was like a kind of a slam dunk, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, he got a death bump too, and that's what probably finally put him over the top.
Well, we'll talk about that as well when we get to the the modern category this year. Johnny Rougeau, totally criminal that he wasn't in before.
Yeah.
Totally good job for everybody to get him in. He should have been in a long time ago. Well deserved. Shout out to Johnny Rougeau. Then you had the big controversial names, Roman Reigns and the Young Bucks. Did you vote for either or both of them?
I voted for the Bucks.
No love for the head of the table. I see.
No.
Totally understandable. I think that the thing is, I feel like I disqualify myself from modern in that I wouldn't want to vote for anybody who's still active. Like, and it's been said by
I don't have that problem. It's just I don't think his actual run at the top was particularly long.
Oh, it's not nothing about. Yeah, nothing against Roman Reigns at all. It's not just him; it's everybody on the ballot.
Oh, okay.
And it also gives me that's not him at all. I wouldn't have voted for the Young Bucks or anybody active, like no matter who it is, especially CM Punk. And as long as I can use that as an excuse to not have him come in and not vote for him, I will use it every single time. Gerard, you need to understand that. But I'm just kidding, of course, on that. But I do think it's kind of silly to talk about some of these guys. And I mean, there's a number of people on the ballot this year, and a bunch of them dropped off, like a Kevin Owens, type of person, Sami Zayn. There's still so much left unwritten, I feel like, or that could, maybe it's not unwritten, but it could be unwritten. I think we have to at least give these guys a chance. And I'm always a big proponent of that. And I think it's been said, I'm not the first person to make this claim, but if it were up to me, it's not up to me. It's Dave Meltzer's rules, and I do respect them, don't get me wrong, but I would have moved the minimum age up a little bit to a 40 or 45 era to prevent certain things like that. And some people have said to me to try and base it more around the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a way of doing it, of the date of the first album released, which would kind of push things back in a wrestling sense to when you made your debut on TV. But
that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, that's something that we were talking about on my page or my Twitter page or whatever. People had messaged me that after last year's episode, me and you did, because I complain about this every year, pretty much on here, and I will do it again. But I'm not complaining about it. It's not like I think, oh man, the Bucks, there's no way they deserve it. Obviously, their ideals. I mean, look at this. They're number 2 among reporters and number 14 among active wrestlers. Number 14 among historians as well. So the Bucks got love. They didn't rank among the retired wrestlers, so the retired wrestlers didn't think much of them. Uh, Roman, he was all over the place. He was number 8 among reporters, number 5 among historians, 6 among active wrestlers, and number 3 among retired wrestlers. So he was top 10 in all 4 categories of voters there. But I don't think it's that interesting to talk about these guys, whether it's them or a John Moxley or a Drew McIntyre or whoever this year. I just want to see things play out how they could, or else maybe I'm just scarred by Nakamura, Gerard. Maybe that's my problem overall.
Well, what has he
But
done to justify his spot?
very,
Not
very
much.
little in the last decade. But he is not on the ballot. We cannot go down. We cannot change anything at the end of the day. But as I said, I definitely want to talk about the ballot this year, and we will talk about it with the Japan region starting off here. And the interesting thing about Japan this year, he made a really smart move, in my opinion, when he based the limit to vote in terms of the actual amount of people that are on the ballot. So if you've got 20 guys in a region, you're going to have more abilities to vote. That's why something like the historical and the modern, they have more people, so you can vote for 6. But Japan, there's less people on our end of the ballot, so it's really only 3 that you could vote for this year for Japan specifically, and the same thing for Mexico. Obviously, you are voting on this region, Gerard. Although if you wanted to bow out, I wouldn't judge you. um, let's go over the candidates straight up, and then we'll talk about them. We'll talk about the new guys specifically and girl in a little bit of depth, and we'll just get kind of free form thoughts on the others. So once again, returning Satoshi Kojima and Hiroshi Tenzan. Yoshiaki Fujiwara is back on the ballot. Hayabusa is also back. Masaki Mochizuki is a fresh face that we get to talk about in depth today, so I'm looking forward to that. Inoki and Seiji Sakaguchi as a tag team. They remain on the ballot once again. Zack Sabre Jr. coming in here, the former IWGP Heavyweight Champion, just lost it a couple weeks ago. Meiko Satomura, who just retired this past year, she returns. She's been on the ballot for a while. Io Sky / Io Shirai gets to be on the Japan ballot here. This is her first go around at it after Asuka came in last year on the Modern US, which is an interesting difference here. Tiger Jeet Singh, he returns. Yoshihiro Takayama returns, and Manami Toyota and Toshio Yamada, they are back again as a tag team. So I kind of alluded to it early on, and I'm going to throw it to you here. When you look at the Japan region, what do you think of this year? Because as I said, I don't think anybody thinks it's the strongest it's been. Do you have any kind of different feelings among the returning candidates? Was there somebody that jumped up to you that was like, oh, I really have come around on this guy? Or was there somebody you're like, maybe I overrated him before. I need to take a second look. What's kind of your vibe on the returning candidates this year?
Well, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm voting for Mako for the first time ever.
Okay. And what led you to that change from where she was last year? You just loved that retirement show so much.
Well, I mean, I thought she had a pretty good retirement road. I thought
Yeah.
the ballot is a lot thinner, and I thought so. It's funny because I did want to talk to her because I had 2 trains of thoughts. I'm voting her really as a work rate candidate. Because it's funny
Okay.
because I said in past years, well, she hasn't done much lately. Well, then she did some stuff, and
Wow.
she basically is retiring as an incredible wrestler still. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I was never particularly moved by the she kept Joshi afloat in dark times, particularly because Toyota retired in 2017, 2018.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So, I mean, she was around. Aja has been around. And, I think Sendai Girls being quote unquote dominant promotion, relatively speaking, and Joshi did not last very long. And I think even though Stardom in the early years was pretty small, it overtook them relatively quickly. So, I guess I would argue she has some influence as a trainer, but
Mhm.
that's a very high bar to get someone in on that. So and I went back and I watched some of her stuff, like her match against Akira Hokuto from was it 2001?
Yeah, that's a legendary match.
Yeah, and stuff like that. I'd seen all that stuff before, and the Gaia stuff, and I was just like, you know what? No, I think she's absolutely probably one of the best workers of the 21st century.
I think that's honestly totally fair. The thing with this list is, I feel like I'm looking at a lot of names that I wouldn't. It's not like I look at these guys and think, oh, this individual has no business. There is one person I feel that way about, but there's very few that I think so and so has no business in this Hall of Fame. Um, the tag team candidates are like super spotty to me on here, but everyone I think has some argument of some sort, but it's just not overwhelming on almost any of them. I feel like, like everyone has flaws you can poke at too. I think that's a good way to
Sure.
say it. There's pros and cons really. There's nobody that's like, oh, clearly this individual, you don't even have to think about it. They're in. I don't really feel that way about any of these people here, including Mako, who I love a lot. And I've always been a fan of hers. I totally agree with you about the not keeping things afloat, or the keeping things afloat argument being kind of weak for her. It's not
Yeah.
just her. Like, it wasn't even just the names you mentioned. Even somebody like a Nanae Takahashi, like,
Right. Right.
who is also an incredible worker, and I think deserves to be spoken about as a legend in her own right. If anything, she was on, and she was the one that kept Stardom afloat at the very beginning. She was their ace at the start while all the young wrestlers were getting ready. Um, but all kinds of people came through like in those years, and I think the thing that she does have is what you mentioned about her training. That's something I personally value a lot. I know some people, and I've seen some comments from people that think that that's like a weakness of someone if they trained a lot of people. I don't really agree with that. Like, because it's been mentioned that that's kind of a shot on Ultimo. Is that like, oh, Ultimo Dragon, all his best thing that he did was train a bunch of great wrestlers, but that also counts for influence to me, and definitely significance in the business, in my opinion. So I think Mako does deserve props for that, and as a worker, she is top of the class. I would say. I don't think that she's like, again, if you compared her to a Nanahashi, I don't think she's like so many levels above that, like that it makes her look bad. I think it's very close, and they're both fantastic, amazing, world class wrestlers. That I'll vote for both. We talked about it on the Flow Show, the greatest wrestler ever, coming up
Yeah.
next year for the End Ring, and I think that Mako is for sure in my top 100 at the least, and Nana will
Yes.
be there as well. I think that they both deserve it if you look at their matches and how they kept things afloat. Not just Mako, but others as well. As I said, somebody like and there's so many names that have slipped through the cracks over the years. I always bring up, even when I had Fumi Saito on, he was shocked when I brought up Azumi Hyuga, one of the best workers, and he knew she was one of the best, but she was just surprised that I knew that she was one of the best, or anybody in the West, really, because that's somebody who the Dark Ages were just not accessible to a lot of the fans at the time, and they just got forgotten about it. And it's something we talked about on the episode of the Lariat a couple of weeks ago about Go's first All Japan run. A
Hmm.
lot of those matches are lost to time, overall. And it's a shame because that era of All Japan was really interesting and fun to watch. And the Dark Ages were a
Yes.
lot of fun to watch as well, but we just can't do it anymore because they're lost to the internet. Um, so you would say Mako is really a work rate first candidate for you?
Me, yes.
Yeah. Okay, and I think she deserves props for significance and influence as well, for the training. So Mako's coming in a good spot for you. Improved her setup here. Um, did you have any second thoughts about anybody else, or was it just Mako?
Uh, No, she's the only person that I haven't voted for before on my ballot in
Okay.
Japan.
Yeah. And everyone else, you kind of stand pat. Are you still a Tiger Jeet Singh guy?
Of course.
You wrote
I'm
the
very
article on that.
well, yeah. I mean, look, you say that everyone has flaws, which is true, but I mean, his influence and his drawings totally outweigh the fact that he's one of the worst in-ring performers ever. Although, I mean, if you take a broad definition of in-ring performer, he's actually very influential in some ways in terms of the entrance and everything like that.
He's another guy that, he was big for almost 2 decades in between Japan and also, in Maple Leaf Gardens as well.
Yes.
He was able to do some things. He had a bit of a run in Mexico, which I was digging up, and it was a little underrated overall. He was doing some main events there in UWA in the past. Uh, I think that obviously the in ring is always going to be a flaw with him. Like that's something that people always point to, and I agree. Like with those people who say that he's not very captivating as an in ring performer for sure, but I do think that like he has to be respected not just as a draw, but somebody who was able to take this madman type of archetype that he had, and some of the big draws that he had against Inoki. He was one of Inoki's major rivals,
Yes.
career rivals in his career. And I think when you look at that fact, he's more than worthy, like overall. So I do think that he's a guy that his influence is kind of like it's not like he trained anyone or anything like that. But he is a guy that when you talk about the archetype of his character, that was passed along to guys that came after him as well and done in their own ways. We talked about Abby before, which is a similar type of crazy foreigner type of character. Bruiser Brody, everyone points to.
Well,
But that
I
stuff
mean,
worked.
Tiger was the one to do the crazy entrances first in Japan.
Yeah, and it's something that we still see. That lasted for decades after his major run. At the end of the day, too. So I totally get where you're coming from on that. I suppose you will leave. I'm not gonna get into Fujiwara because that's too
Yeah.
that's like the most hot button candidate of
Well,
everyone.
it's not even a hot button, but I think we've both made our views known
Yeah.
over the years.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've kind of said my piece, you've said your piece. Um I cannot change your mind on Takayama. Yes or no?
I, I love him. He's in my personal Hall of Fame, but I can't. There's just not enough there.
You said that in your article that you wrote about him as well.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say about him, because he's somebody that I did a lot into to try to find ways to convince more people to vote for him. And his story, it is what it is. But then I looked at him. Like I looked at his career and his run. And obviously I think if you're gonna look at him as a negative or a negative in-ring, it's that his run on top before his stroke was really only a couple of years at the end of
Yep.
the day. That's the same problem with Yamada and Toyota. Although I think that's worse because their whole run was 2 or 3 years on top, which was it was amazing, peak for
Yes, it
peak.
was.
Yeah, peak for peak, Yamada and Toyota might be the strongest one, but that's it. Is the problem? There's really nothing before or after of real note between them. So it's really hard to say, hey, this good 2 or 3 run is Hall of Fame worthy. Um, but with Takayama, I was watching a lot of his UWF I run and stuff that he was doing. And I really think that this guy was showing flashes of what he would be pretty early on. And obviously, the 90s, we always talk about how much we love No Fear as a team.
Yeah.
And I went back and dug up, and this took me a while to dig up, by the way, like to find this match, I promise you. But it was some of the tag matches he had with Omori in the 0-1 run of 2008. And I was like, man, this guy might still be the best worker like in the whole world in 2008. The fire that those two guys showed And Omori, everyone knows I love Omori. Not that he's on the ballot, but I'm a huge Takao Omori fan. He never, ever, ever, ever looked better than he did against Takayama in those 0-1 matches, man. And he was just killing it up and down there. Um, I brought up, I'm sure I said last year about his Triple Crown run, which did good business, but not to like a crazy degree or anything like that. Um, but man, I just think about his run. It's like, he's the best worker in the world in a short period of time, but he at least has an argument to be the best wrestler in the world in ring, and also the biggest star in Japan at a point. Um, he's won all the major titles. He's had the best matches of the year. He's won the Tokyo Sports Award for Match of the Year. It's like he's done everything. He's influenced people in MMA, and I just think, man, this guy is somebody I've really felt. I already liked him last year and before, but when I went through everything and I looked at how much crossover appeal he's had, and I went back to the Brock Lesnar induction, and obviously nowadays he's has a lot of out of the ring stuff that is negative on him. But back when he got in, I was seeing some of these articles, and many people were talking about how much his MMA stuff helped him. And I really think that's not fair that it would count for him, and Takayama's fights in Pride would not help him as well overall. Uh, in addition, one more thing to say, because I love his matches. I love him as a wrestler. All the main guys, I thought he was, like I said, I really thought he outshined a lot of people in his class in that era. Again, it was only 3 years, and that's a totally valid criticism. But even the Kobashis of the world, I think you could easily argue that Takayama had an even better run. And it's hard for me when I see that to not think of this guy as just a major player in the Hall of Fame and somebody that deserves a lot. And I even watched his match with Suzuki in Noah in 2015, and I thought he was so much better. And now I'm probably not the right person to say this because I've always been kind of a low man on Suzuki, but I thought Takayama just smoked him in that match. Like, he was so much better, and that was in 2015. So Takayama, I highly recommend everybody, even if you're not going to vote for him for the Hall of Fame, make some time to watch some of his amazing matches that he had over the years, and not just the big run that he had, because he was great later than that too, maybe later than some people think there as well, going in there. I also looked up, okay, this is my last argument for him to try and sway you, Gerard. What do you think of the fact that he released an album when he was in the UWFI?
I didn't know that, actually. But
do you know the name? Do you want to guess the name of this CD that he? Because it was when he was part of a group called the Golden Cups. This was before All Japan. It was like 95, 96.
Oh, that was with Anjo and Yamamoto, right?
Yes. The name of this CD is called O Taco, where they covered some Japanese songs and made up their own songs. I don't think it charted anywhere. I hope it didn't chart anywhere, to be honest. And I also found out that he was a voice actor on the 2016 Saint Seiya series as well. So he was still getting run in 2015, 2016. Some things to think about. Otako, Hall of Fame, Gerard. Keep in mind. But besides all of that, with the new people on the ballot here, and this is one I was really hoping that it wouldn't just be like all New Japan guys. And I know it's hard because we saw it last year with Kento. He didn't even get 10%. He dropped off the ballot. That sucked. We've seen it before with people like Marufuji Sugiura. If you're not in New Japan and you're a more modern candidate, you've really had a hard time out getting in. So I was happy that didn't dissuade Dave from putting these people on, because I think that they're really good candidates to have in. And those two new folks are Masaki Mochizuki. He represents Dragon Gate, as we alluded to earlier, and Io Sky / Io Shirai in Japan. So she represents Stardom. and many Joshi companies before Stardom started. I remember watching her when she was still starting in those dark ages with her sister and Kana and all of that, as well as WWE and her run going on right now. So I want to deep dive into these two real quick. We'll kind of wrap Japan up after we get through these two here. What is your take on Mochizuki coming in as a candidate? Obviously, longtime guy in wrestling. He's both a modern and, back to the 90s candidate. What's your take on him? What's your feeling on Mochi as a Hall of Famer?
It's tough because I was like, well, maybe I should vote for him, but I couldn't just do it. I think, I mean, he's an incredible specimen for his skill level, for how long he's been doing it and everything like that, right? Would he be also the first war candidate to get? No, actually, no. But there's not a lot of war guys in either. I think we should recognize that as well. So one of the things, though, I think, and this can go other ways, is like, do you really think, though, if you put Dragon Gate in historical perspective, you could justify like a business case? And I don't
I think
know about that.
I think his biggest power that he would have on that, that's a good thing, because they always say the thing that we are supposed to judge these candidates by is listed as three major categories. The first is drawing power, of course. The second is in-ring great matches and things like that. And then finally, historical significance and influence on the business in a positive manner. Because you could be significant and influence the business in a negative manner, but that doesn't count, allegedly. But with the drawing power aspect, it's something that this is where I think a lot of people get hung up on the non-New Japan guys, Gerard, where they always act like these companies, because they're not as big in the modern day as a New Japan. And I mean, Dragon Gate was never as big as New Japan. I'm not claiming that in any way. But I think that they automatically don't even want to look into their candidacy in the category, just because it's like they automatically mark them off. And I think he's a guy that his greatest strength would be his longevity. He's been there. He's always been trusted, back to a year or two, ago, where he's in main event title matches and always around, the top of the card. It's going down a little bit now, but pretty much the entirety of Dragon Gate's existence, he's been at worst an upper mid-carder and a lot of times a main eventer, including, he was the main guy. And in 2010, 2011, he was the Sugiura of his company in a lot of ways. And that's kind of how I look at him in a lot of ways. He's like a Sugiura, but for Dragon Gate. Not just his in-ring work, but just his status, where it's like, he's always the guy they fight. Like, if things go wrong, I've said this about Sugiura before in Noah. If things are going down, Doi's having a 5,000-year reign. It just will never end before they turned him heel. That horrific first title reign that Doi had. It just went on and on and on. They turned to Mochi to make things better and like have a strong run to re-solidify the belt. The same way Sugiura came forward in 2010 for Noah as well. Go's title run wasn't hitting. And obviously a lot of other bad things behind the scenes were happening that would get told in, Izumita's book a couple of years later. But they needed somebody that they're considered reliable. Sugiura was always that guy. And I feel like Mochi was that guy for Dragon Gate too. He's not drawing the dome level shows, but he's the one they turn to when they need somebody to be reliable.
Mochi's been doing it even longer than Sugiura. I mean, Sugiura doesn't win the GHC title till 2009 or 2010, whereas Mochi was a big part of Toryumon from the beginning, basically.
Absolutely. And as I said, he's still been up there this whole time of his career. He was just in the secondary title match last month, and in fact, let's not forget, a former national champion in Noah as well, Mochizuki. So even in Noah, they had him as like a Sugiura-esque character for that brief run he was in. But
Very true.
I I loved him as a wrestler a lot, and I think that's really going to really determine where you fall on him. What's your take on him as a wrestler, like in ring skills?
Incredible, underrated at the same time as well, and a top level worker for almost 30 years. And he was pretty good from the beginning, really, if you think about it.
Yep, yeah, he was. Like I said, he came about. Um, Obviously, he was like a Katao guy, and that got brought over to War. Um, like you said, he was actually in Super J Cup '95, and that was like his first year, like for 1 or 2 years in. He faced Otani in a really good match. It was short, but it was good. Um, and obviously, he blew up once Toryumon the jump got made, and he only became bigger when Dragon Gate kind of infiltrated its way in. Um, I think he is an excellent, excellent wrestler. Um, he's a guy that I wish that would get more praise, and I think even he's a guy because there's been eras of DG. I would consider myself a fan personally of the company, but there were times that I just was not vibing with the promotion at all. And the style was so one note after a while where it's like everybody kind of wrestled similarly, like the pace was very similarly. You would get these Brave Gate matches, which were good quality matches, but they would be the more fast paced, and the Dream Gate matches would go like 35 minutes, and it would be these slow, boring matches. Like usually Yamato was involved, and I just was not feeling that. But Mochi was always the one that I felt, much like I said about him as a draw, I honestly feel the same way about him as a wrestler. He was always the one that I could always trust. Like in every era of Dragon Gate, Mochizuki was going to bring greatness. Like not just good, but great. And I mean, if you look at him, I think he's also underrated in terms of variety. Because if you look at the level of guys he was facing, yeah, everybody knows he's kind of the martial arts guy, the kick guy, and the striker. But he wasn't just wrestling those guys in DG. There were high flying guys, like, people like Yoshino, he's had incredible matches with. Uh, he was doing the
Shingo.
comedic stuff. Yeah, Shingo, obviously the more power guy. He was doing the comedic stuff with M2K and doing a great job with that as well. He's like very reliable as the veteran babyface or as an over the top heel. He's played both characters really strongly at the end of the day. And I think that's something he doesn't get enough credit for, too, because of that. Because he made that work to the point where they were able to bring that gimmick back 20 years later when his son came in. They did the M3K again. So it's like you see all of that. You've seen his title runs and the things that he meant as the champion. And I just think this guy is an incredible worker. And if you wanted to vote for him as an in-ring candidate, I really wouldn't fault you at all. I think he really is up there and he deserves to be if you look at the variety of matches that he's had. Um, Influence and significance, he's very significant to Dragon Gate itself. I wouldn't
Yes.
say particularly influential outside of that, though.
No.
Yeah, So I think with drawing, I don't, and all of that, I don't think it's a really Hall of Fame style case for him either as the draw or in terms of significance either,
But
outside of
I
to
mean,
his company.
well, yeah, but I mean, he helps establish this company that's now existed almost 30 years in one form or another.
Absolutely. Uh,
And that counts for something, right? And he's been there like almost the entire time. So that counts for something, I think.
I do too. I do agree. It's not all nothing, but I wouldn't put that as like a purely, you could just use that and just say, okay, he's in the Hall of Fame. Like
Yeah.
I think he needs to be considered one of the best workers ever, pretty much, for you to vote for
Well,
him. Like at least the top 50.
I mean, there's very few wrestlers that are going at a high level for as long as he does too, and I think that counts because longevity
Absolutely.
can play a factor if it's positive, and it is in that case, right? I wouldn't have
Yeah.
voted for Ishii if he had like only 5 years of that. Like if his run was like 2013 and 2018, I don't think I would have
Mhm.
voted for him. You know, you know.
Well, I'm a big Ishii Hall of Fame defender, so so you're preaching
Yeah.
to the choir on that. Uh, I really would recommend everybody out there check out his run. He was basically the champion for most of 2011, the Dreamgate champion, and that run was phenomenal. I think he's a guy, and I will recommend everybody listen to Open the Voice Gates Mochizuki episode because they go hours in depth on him. If you want the complete run of his story, but he's a guy that they made a great point. If you look at all the guys who are the top DG wrestlers, Mochizuki basically has everybody's best match. Whether it's a Yoshino, a Shingo, that's a legendary match. Like the best of Shingo's Berserk run was against Mochizuki, by my opinion, and I think by a lot of people's. And even up to Yuki Yoshioka's a couple of years ago, that was the best match of his run, and a match of the year level match as well, I would say. So I love the variety. He's been a part of some really good units as well. Usually as the veteran guy, that's a lot of his run. Um, and I think he's a great guy to have. Definitely check out his matches with Shima, who got in last year, Shingo, who got in last year. I thought he had the best Yamato match. It saved the company pretty much with Yamato's like so annoying 2016, 2017 Dreamgate run. Uh, like when Mochizuki got it back again, just me as a fan, I love that at the end of the day because that was another one of those reigns that never ended, and Mochizuki brought it back. It was a great bridge to get back to Yoshino at first, but then back to Pac's big run as well, which a lot of people remember well. Uh, so yeah, Mochizuki has a ton of great matches. The match with Hulk at Kobe World in 2011 was great as well. Uh, Mochizuki just rules, man. Like great wrestler, and he's not. I don't think you could say again, like you kind of said about Ishii. You can't if it was just 5 years, you're not going to vote for that. But he's got 25 years, more like as an
Yeah.
elite level worker, and very important to DG. So definitely like him. Are you going to vote for him? Yeah or nay? Ultimately this year.
Not this year, no.
If I discover that he had an album in War, will that sway you any?
In war? Yes.
Yes. Okay. I need to. I'm going to do some extra research next year. Like the other historians, they look for big houses and matches. I look to see who released Otako. Okay, that's what I bring to the table here. So no Emochi this year, but a good candidate for sure on the region. And that brings us to the other new candidate, Io Sky / Io Shirai. So Io, she makes the ballot, and I think that she's really at the height of her popularity at this point. This is kind of Dave's counter argument for what I said earlier about raising the age and what other people have said. Again, it's not just me saying this; it's a lot of people, but he wants us to look at these people in real time and not lose kind of sight at each other, sight at how wrestlers are in their time period. And so that's his argument. And I think we have a great candidate right here to talk about because she has been wrestling for nearly 20 years. She started as a very young teenager. And at the point where she gets on the ballot, she's at the height of her popularity worldwide. She's got a great push in WWE lately. She's somebody who won the women's world title at WrestleMania this year, going over two of the top stars that they have in Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley. So her name is hot right now. People want to know what she's doing. Her storyline's all over Raw. That she's doing with Asuka and Kairi. Like this. She's one of the most pushed people. And on top of it, as a Japanese wrestler, that's something that for years and years we just were not able to really get. and she's somebody that's really broke through that barrier. Um, and arguably one of the top performers ever in the history of the company from Japan to break through that barrier in WWE. So, as we speak, literally this morning, as we speak, she drew the best sumo hall house for Marigold, main eventing versus Mayo Iwatani. Her match with Iwatani was up almost 400 over last year's show, where it was her versus Utami Shishida, and the main event was Julia and Sari. So Io and Mayu drew well for the company. A lot of people are praising it on Joshi Twitter. um, what's your take on Io as a candidate? Because I think you mentioned the context that we have to judge all these candidates in. She's somebody that's such a unique case, I would say. But what's your feeling on Io?
She's a very unique case, and I'm not voting for her this year, but I'm very open to it in terms of we're going on a long time. Are we at we're over a decade yet of her being one of the best workers on the planet, I think, really, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's also a huge star at a hot, at a pretty hot time for the company in WWE. So I think it's one of those things that I'm close, but I'm not going to do it yet because there's other people I'd rather vote for to get in
Mm-hmm.
now. But I am very open to her. Um, I'm very open to her, I should say, right? But like, it's mostly a work case with a little WWE business case on top during a hot period sprinkled on top, which is why I have no problem waiting a year or two to vote for her. But I would say it's on the trajectory that I will vote for her.
And the thing about her is she's only 35. The odds are you're looking at least 5 more big years from her.
Yeah.
If not decades. Like it's possible she keeps going well into her 50s. And I'm not saying to bank on that, it's a guarantee. But somebody like a Jaguar Yokota is still going to this day.
Yes.
I don't see
65 now or almost.
Yeah, she's in her 60s for sure.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So she's somebody that she was all over the place. I remember watching her at JWP in like 08, with her sister again. That's kind of how she broke in with Mio, and then they formed Triple Tails with Kana. But once we got to the Stardom years, she from the start was positioned as one of the top people. She wasn't the first champion, obviously, that was Nanae. But basically, how that worked is Nanae held it for like 2 years. They did a bridge title switch to a wrestler named Alpha Female, and then that immediately flipped to Io, who had it for over a year and solidified herself as the ace of the company, pretty much. And things went back and forth for a couple of years. She had it for a long time. Things went a little crazy in the company because she lost it to Yoshiko, and then everything happened with Yoshiko and Act, which that had nothing to do with Io. So at that point, they decided to make the move to push Kairi Hojo for the first time as a main eventer, which was a major upset. Most everybody thought Io was going to win the title at that point, because what had happened was Yoshiko and Act happened, the Ghastly match. They stripped her of the title, and they had this mini tournament to determine who would be next champion, and it came down to Io and Kairi. And again, everybody thought Io was going to win, but they went the other way with Kairi. That led to a great title reign with Kairi. That led to Meiko getting the title, Meiko Satomura, who we talked about, who you're voting for earlier. And Meiko really elevated the belt back to where it was at the start with Nanae, with the veteran credibility, and that really boosted Io. And at that point, around 2016, the start of 2016, the end of 2015, Io was basically this top star in Joshi at that point, for like hands down. And they built a lot with her as champion, a lot with her and Mayu, obviously. And basically, they had a brief heel turn. People might not know this now, but she was the original founder of Queen's Quest, the group that Utami and Saya Kamatani later joined much later. But that was Io's heel group with Momo and Hazuki. at the start, and they got through that, and then she went to WWE, where she was able to win basically every title. She's won the NXT title, the SmackDown title, and the Raw title, as well as the tag team championships. So Io has been able to accomplish things, and obviously titles in WWE, especially, you can take them with a grain of salt sometimes on what they mean. But I do think titles mean something a lot of times when you analyze somebody's career, just in terms of the fact that, like, not that they're like shoot titles or anything like that. I don't, obviously we all know better, but more so that it means the company sees something in you that you're at least worth putting this on. And especially a WrestleMania match, that does mean something when you win the belt there, no matter how low the title can get, which we got to this year. So then at that point, the drawing power thing. The thing is, her time in Stardom, it was better than the Dark Ages, but it was like a constantly grow. It was like growing. It was constant growing pains, so to speak, with the company. People got hurt. Crazy things happened. People left. There was all kinds of chaos with things with Stardom when she was around. I wouldn't say that she was like a Hall of Fame level draw. If anything, the biggest star that Stardom had from Stardom's start to when she left was a wrestler named Yuzuki Aikawa. Like, she was the real top star, even if she wasn't the champion. And her retirement show did a huge number at the time for them, but she unfortunately, and she was an idol first. She was like one of Rossi's mini idol project wrestlers, but she was the best one that he basically ever came through in a lot of ways. Uh, so to me, drawing power, it's really hard to say that she has like a legendary or Hall of Fame case, even in her context. But I do think that there's plenty of room to grow in that if she is able to do things. I mean, this past year, she was in the main event of the all women show, the Evolution show with Ripley. And a lot of people were down on that in terms of the number it did and all of that. So I I really don't know about her as a draw Hall of Famer.
No, I was thinking about this, and this might sound harsh because people are also talking about like who in this current generation of Stardom, given how big they have drawn, um, could be in the conversation one day on the ballot or anything. And look, maybe this is unfair, and I have to be a little more, open to the changing reality. But these business cases in Japan are not very compelling to me, um, at all. Just given how far the business has fallen. If you think about go back to 1991 and 1992, how many promotions could draw at least 10,000 fans once a year? You're looking at 4 or 5, maybe even 6 promotions could do 10,000 at least once. And now that's only one company can, and Stardom has yet to do with 10,000 people. So,
Mhm.
so
And
some
they're
of these,
much higher
like,
now than they were when Io was there. Like
yeah,
when Bushiroad's money.
and here's the thing: Stardom right now as a number 2 company. If you look into historical perspective of how big the number 2 company in Japan once was, let alone number 3, like FMW is bigger than Stardom.
Oh,
you know,
that's not even that's not even close. I would say.
right? So
Yeah.
and it was always the number 3 or number 4. So that's why I'm just like not very moved by a lot of these business arguments. And like, do I have to then grade on a curve, or do I have to just
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
like, is the business permanently handicapped? Maybe because it doesn't have primetime TV, but I don't know. I'm just not moved by a lot of the business stuff. But I'm very still open to Shirai for what she has done otherwise.
Mm. The in-ring stuff, I honestly, at the time, again, and I haven't gone back in a long time and watched that era, I wouldn't have said she was the best Joshi wrestler in the world 10 years ago. Like, I honestly think, and we have real-time documentation of this through the first couple of years of the Eastern Lariat. Early 2016 to 2018 when she left. Or maybe 2017. But the first year or two of the show when we were talking about it. I really thought she stepped her game up in a big way when she turned heel at the very end. Like, I thought she really busted her ass to get over Mayu, Hazuki, and Momo, and she really cared a lot. Not that she didn't care before, but I think her as the ace type of character, maybe it was just because I was comparing it to the past generations of wrestlers, but I thought that there were others better than her, to be honest with you, at the end of the day. And I remember how excited everyone was when Kyrie won the belt, and they got through, and now many people say that Mako and Io match where Io won the red belt at the year-end climax 2016 or 2015 rather for Stardom, um, when Io won the belt over Mako. They say that was one of the best Stardom matches ever, but I personally prefer the Mako match with Kyrie. That was a draw. That was June 2015. I thought that match hit me more than the year-end show. And Io's had a number of great matches with Kyrie and Mayu as well. And a lot of that has come down. And even to 2025, she had another banger, this morning pretty much. But I do think a lot of their matches together are, they were very great in terms of, like, the move sets that they have and how far they would go. They would do a lot. Like, they would really, go all out against each other. But in terms of overall matches, there were others that really grabbed me more from people like Arisa Nakajima and stuff. That's another one that was around earlier then. I think in WWE, she has successfully broken through pretty much any possible expectations that anyone would have had for her. And she's done a great job. I remember this year's WrestleMania weekend, me and on my other show, Wrestle Update with Melody Annalise, we went through basically every WrestleMania weekend show. And by the end of it, her triple threat, that was both of our number one matches. And, Nello is a big indie fan. He doesn't even like WWE. He's a, kind of a hater in a little ways, which we all are, I would say. But at the end of the day, that match was incredible. And that was one of the better WWE matches you're going to see for a long time. And she's broken through in a way to where people don't just call her one of the best women's wrestler on the roster. She's just one of the best on the roster at the end of the day. And I think we're going to see the fruits of all of the years to come in terms of the significance that she has, as well as the influence that she's going to have on a lot of wrestlers, which I think we're already kind of seeing that in a lot of ways. But I think that influence that she's going to have in years to come is going to be incredibly strong. And it's something that a lot of women's wrestlers are going to follow and dream and try to follow her specific path. Although I guess, some would say Asuka would have started that. But I actually think Io has kind of gotten even more love from WWE, and it feels like she's been in a bigger place than even Asuka was before her.
Absolutely.
So I think that she's a great candidate for the next 5 years, pretty much. Like, I want to see where she's at 5 years from now.
Oh, I don't know. I don't even think I have to wait that long. 2 or 3 tops for me.
Okay, 3 years then. Let's say.
Yeah.
I'm trying to push this 40-year-old like thing. Like, I'm trying to get the age ballot voted up here. But no, like, again, just a few years from now, let's see where she's at. And I think if she continues how she's going, she's definitely a Hall of Famer. And it's not like if you did vote, if you came out here and was like, no, for sure I'm voting for her now, I wouldn't be like, I can't believe it. Why couldn't you wait 5 years? She doesn't deserve it now. I don't feel that way because I think that she's a reasonable candidate now. I just think that she'll be even better if she keeps up how she's going. And again, I'm somebody who was probably still obviously very high on her. I still liked her a lot a decade ago. I thought she was one of the best. But I think the narrative on her is that she was like by far the greatest wrestler, like the greatest women's wrestler in the world. And I don't think it was that cut and dry, as a lot of people said, even in the Joshi world, in my personal opinion. So, with that said, let's take one more look at this region here with Japan. Do you have any thoughts on any of the other candidates for Japan this year?
Well, let me just reiterate once again that you should be voting for Tiger Jeet Singh. I'm not convinced by the anti-Tiger arguments. Also, I actually think Zack Sabre Jr. is a pretty weak candidate.
Okay, so I wanted to bring that up because last year when we did the show, he had just won the title for the first time.
Right.
And our conversation was pretty much like, let's see how this goes. Because last year I thought it was like crazy that he was a candidate in the first place, but I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. They given him the ball, let's go for it.
You know, it's funny. I forgot he was on last year. I thought he was new.
No, he was on last year. And he was a surprise to me that he even made like the cut line pretty much. Like I thought he was going to go down.
Well,
He's
here's
still
the
low.
thing.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people say that they're going to vote for him, and it shocks me.
To me, and I feel a little bad for saying it like this, but when I look at him, and I look at this whole ballot, every region and a lot of the regions we talked about in years past, I really feel like if he and he's the one that I was afraid of when I said about the next man up mentality,
right?
Because now all the New Japan guys are in. Like Shingo went in last year. Now all the modern New Japan guys, not obviously Inoki and Sakaguchi and Ten Kozi and all that, but all of the modern ones have gone in, and he is the next one on the ballot. If he gets into this Hall of Fame, I feel like we've lowered the bar in a lot of ways. Like, I think he's a historically weak level of candidacy. And the thing about him is, I know that a lot of people really love his work and think that he's an incredible worker. Let me tell you this, Gerard. I honestly think you could make the case this past year in 2025 has been some of his best in-ring work of his entire career. Like the both Goto matches, I think, are phenomenal. And I know everyone brings up the moment of Goto winning the belt and all of that, but he was great in that match. He doesn't wrestle like he always does, and that's what irritates me so much about him sometimes, because I watch these matches where he does 50,000 submissions and it just turns into an exhibition that nothing ever means anything. But then you see him against Goto, and he had this great match where he was totally on point with Goto's arm. He did it in inventive ways, and you saw how great he really can be. And I think this year his in-ring work is great, and in the past I've liked him a lot. Again, much like I said about Io, I think I'm a level below most people who think he's like this all-timer in the ring. I think he's more like an 8 or a 9 out of 10 instead of an overwhelming 10. But then you look at the drawing power, and it's like, come on. like they've given him the chance twice now. This was one of the absolute lowest points of the G1 in its history. Even Tanahashi's retirement run could not save this tournament with him as champion. This run with Takeshita just did a terrible number. Again,
Yeah.
Domes, 2 of the weakest domes of all time with him in the main event, back to back, Gerard. What are we talking about here? Like, again, like, compare him to a Takayama. Again, we saw like amazing dome shows with Takayama in the main event. Some may say the numbers might not have been completely truthful. This is Inoki we're talking about after all. But in fact, there was one that was like 60,000, which we know wasn't truthful because that's not even possible.
And Inoki claimed 70,000 on his retirement show.
Of course he did. But regardless, I've seen that match with him and Nagata. First of all, it was a great match. Secondly, there were a lot of people in that building that night. But you see these amazing moments where he's like the top star in the country and on all of these talk shows and as a legendary draw and having these amazing matches. And then you see Zach with all of these. It's like low marks over and over and over again because he is the guy that stayed with New Japan. Like, that's really my take on him and why he got the ball at this point. A lot of their top stars that they had before were not as loyal to the company as he was. And I think that they rewarded him for that, which is cool. I don't hate that. But you cannot look at this run this past year and tell me this is a Hall of Fame level star. And that's one of the things I always say. I've said this to you before, and I've said it before. Like, this isn't necessarily something in the candidacy. But for me, I always kind of get a feeling about a lot of these guys. And that's, is this man a legend? Like, not necessarily a Hall of Fame, but is he a legend? And that's another reason why I have a hard time voting for a lot of these modern guys that are still in the midst of their careers. When I feel like Zach, and a lot of people explain this to me. Let me ask you something, a philosophical question about the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Because it's been phrased to me that the true purpose of this Hall of Fame is to categorize the history of the pro wrestling business. So, for example, in a lot of ways, if you're somebody that you cannot tell the story of wrestling and its history without this person, you're a Hall of Famer. And he's a guy that I think you would lose some matches and some great tag matches with Taichi. Again, in-ring, yes. But I also feel like the amount of changes that New Japan would have without his career would be so much lesser than a Hayabusa to an FMW. For example, if there was no Hayabusa in FMW, that dramatically changes the last half of the company's history. Whereas Zach, I feel like you could have had someone else in his role, and you would have been, if not better, at least equal to what he did. And you don't really... You could tell the story of New Japan without this man, in my opinion. What do you think of that philosophy of the Hall of Fame? Because it's got me thinking. It's not something I particularly subscribe to personally, but it's something I think about. What about you?
I mean, a lot. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have said that, and I've heard people push back against it, but I don't see how you just sort of don't default to that when you start really thinking hard about it. Really, it just seems sort of, even if I can't, it just seems so logical, even if I can't like really fully 100% endorse it.
Yeah, I agree with that. But Zach, I just think, again, it reminds me kind of like when Don Owen went in the promoters. It's like, he was at a good level for a long time, but never really great. And I think with Zach, you could point to some matches that were amazing for sure. But for the most part, he's a guy that's been at it a long time at a mid-card to upper mid-card level. And I just don't see him as a Hall of Famer at all. Like, I think that would be a really troubling outcome if he gets in my opinion. But yeah, with that said, final thoughts. Who are the final three for you to vote for this year? Or do you don't have, you also don't have to vote for every person. You could leave spots blank too.
So here's my ballot: Hayabusa, Tiger Jeet Singh, and Mako Satomura.
So you're on the Hayabusa train.
I am on the Hayabusa train.
The influence is just so strong, and it's only continuing to grow with his second that had just debuted this year as well.
Well, also you could look at Hayabusa, who is seen as a failure in what he draws, versus, well, certain quote-unquote stars today.
Oh yeah, I mean, you made that point with FMW being a bigger company than most today, pretty much everyone at the States. But yeah, it's tough because the company went down, when Onita left, but a lot of that was Onita kind of undercutting Hayabusa as well.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I think a lot of people have moved over the years to recontextualize things. And to kind of benefit a lot of the modern candidates, which are not doing the numbers that they used to. Hayabusa's tough, I feel like, but the influence is so strong that it's hard to say. Again, if you look at it that way, Hayabusa is an absolute necessity to tell the story of pro wrestling at the end of the day, especially in Japan and especially in FMW. So I don't know how you could argue his historical significance is so high. I honestly think you could make the case he's top 3 on the entire ballot in that category, in my opinion.
Ooh.
Yeah.
He's up there.
Every year, the modern wrestlers vote for him. He's always like number 1 among active wrestlers voting. and I think
they
that's
love him.
interesting. Yeah, and a lot of them are influenced by him at the end of the day. So
a lot of the same people who vote for Johnny Saint vote for Hayabusa.
Well, when you say it that way, on there. But hey, at least you voted for Hayabusa. You did not vote for Johnny Saint, correct?
No.
Okay.
Never voted for Johnny Saint.
So let's talk about the modern candidacy here. Now going into the U.S. and Canada, our home countries that we're in, me in the U.S. and you in Canada, of course, as we spoke earlier. This year we had a few candidates back on. They've once again put Seth Rollins on. We will see if this third go around makes it worth it for him. Bill Dundee.
Well, you know what? Let's just cut to the chase right now and deal with Rollins. He's just the new Randy Orton, and that's all there is to it. And I don't think he'll ever have a Hall of Fame career.
If he gets to 10%, I'll be surprised. Honestly, like I really would. Bill Dundee jumping back on in a modern candidacy region. I guess it feels like there's always that one guy. If it wasn't JYD for all those years, you had Paul Orndorff in there. There's always that guy from the 80s that somehow ends up in these modern candidacies.
Well, because Dundee's like wrestled in the last 15 years.
These Memphis guys, they never leave.
Yeah, it's a 30-year cutoff. It's a 30-year cutoff. So that's why like Orndorff was in modern for so long, and some of those other guys were, because if you stopped in the mid 90s, you're only now being moved.
Drew McIntyre, another Scotsman, getting his shot. Yeah, that's the thing. Like these are kind of easy cases to make in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
I think he's kind of underrated among our circle of fans, like the Voices of Wrestling.
Oh, I think he's good. I just think some of it's he's also been snake bitten, but but no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't vote for him as a Hall of Famer. He's another guy, like, I don't even want to talk about these guys right now. Like, where are they going to be in 5 or 10 years at the end of the day? Seth will be back on and off this ballot 3 more times, I think.
Yeah, because they'll eventually put on, like, Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch as a tag team.
What about Mercedes Moné, a new candidate this year?
I think there's something there, actually, and I think I may very frankly, I think she's got a better case than Lynch.
I think in ring, it's really hard to argue Mercedes isn't better than Becky, I would say.
And she's more influential, even if Becky had that very, very, very brief run on the top.
Yeah, no, you're totally right about that. I really think that, and she's another one though. Who knows where she's going to be in 3 to 5 years? She might have just been overpowering in those years. Like with how she's wrestling right now, where she's going to these indie companies to get all these belts.
Yeah.
She's having these matches that are all critically acclaimed. The last year for her, because I remember when she first got into AEW, it was a rocky start. Good. Yeah,
yep.
Yeah, it was a rocky start, and remember her, her shows that she was put in main events of were not drawing that well either, let alone the performance-wise. But something clicked somewhere along the line, around the time of her first Statlander match, I would say, in AEW.
Well, she was also returning from injury, too.
Yeah, true, good point. But once it clicked, she was off to the races, and she looks like one of the best wrestlers in the entire world, pretty much. And on top of it, you could argue her match with Bayley was one of the more important women's matches in U.S. wrestling history, I would say, in NXT. Yeah. Even though I actually like the sequel a little bit better with the Iron Woman match. Like, I know I'm in a rare breed of that, but regardless, she had a lot of really great matches in WWE. There was sometimes, I'm going to be honest, she's another one that for a long time, I thought she was kind of overrated a little bit, because she was someone like a lot of her matches in WWE early on, the first 5 years or so, she was blowing a lot of spots, man. Like, she was not a clean cut worker, and not in a good way. She was in that Hayabusa territory a lot of times.
Well, that's what also endeared her to many. because
And a lot of people would say that about Hayabusa as well. Like him blowing spots, or even a Jeff Hardy, like, and stuff like that, that kind of thing. Or Sabu. We're going to talk about him coming up. But I really think around the time when she got that main event against Bianca, like when they were 1-on-1, like first ever, double black woman main event in WrestleMania, she really, like, that's when she started to click for me. And I thought, okay, I see how great she really is on here. And I mean, her run is fantastic. Again, it's just another one where it's like, man, I wish we were talking about her 5 years from now when we see the culmination of whatever this AEW run is going to be. But I wouldn't say she's a bad vote, though, even now.
No, but I'll wait a bit longer.
What do you think about Sabu?
Oh, no brainer. I'm voting for him.
I think he's like one of those guys where I think a lot of people thought he was already in, to be honest. Like, it's like Jimmy Hart 10 years ago, and everyone's like, hey, wait a minute. Like, why isn't he in? And Dave's like, oh, crap, I forgot about him.
Let me ask you this as a known big fan of ECW.
Oh, of course, my favorite company.
Well, do you think that, I mean, Sabu is very much an influence candidate. So do you think he influenced the business in a positive manner?
Honestly, I think there were times years ago I probably would have argued against these hardcore guys in general. But at the end of the day, as I've gotten older, I don't know who told me this at one point, or maybe it's a famous quote and I can't remember who said it, but it was basically to the effect of, what works in wrestling is what works, pretty much. So, like, if it works, it works.
Yeah.
So just because maybe I didn't love all of his matches, I don't think he's a great worker at all. In-ring candidacy is a 0 for me, practically. Like, I really don't have any affinity for his matches. But to try to deny he didn't have significant influence, come on. At the end of the day, like, no one can make that argument, I would say.
No. And also did so on, I mean, he had a incredible influence on the indies in a way that no other wrestler up to that point had, from just being basically on the indies.
He had an influence on Hayabusa that very few had, who we said was extremely influential. So, again, if you're going to vote for Hayabusa, there's no reason to not vote for Sabu, in my opinion. If somebody votes for Hayabusa, not Sabu, to me, that's a little crazy. Like, I'd really need an explanation behind that. At the end of the day. But he's a really strong candidate, I would say. I think he would be near the top of the list of people I would vote for this year. So, besides that, do you have any thoughts on the returning wrestlers in the modern category? I know we're voting for Goldberg again this year after his retirement.
No.
Damn it.
No, I'm not.
What happened to you, Gerard?
Well, also, it wasn't very good.
That's true. Like, that's accurate.
It did not help his case.
The whole run didn't help his case.
No.
Yeah.
So returning, well, there's Punk and Mox and Briscoe and Rhodes, and I'm all voting for them.
I hate it because Punk is making it so hard for me to argue against him.
Well, as I've said, I think every time I've been on this Hall of Fame show with you on the Eastern Lariat, I think Punk is a big bitch, but he's just got to vote for him because he's a huge star.
I know. Again, I think in the past I could argue negative stuff against him, but like I said, I mean, how at this point it's really hard. Like, he really feels like one of the biggest stars of the modern era. Like, even now. And to some would say, and some would say this is bad on him, but some would say to his credit, there's really been no negative things that have happened to him since he's came back to WWE. Like, he's been.
He knows he's on his last. His real. Well, here the funny thing is, I think
there's never any real last in wrestling. Like, a lot of the times.
Oh, Tony would take him back.
I was going to just say that, Gerard. I was about to make that exact point. If he wanted to come back to AEW, Tony would bring him back 100%.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. So yeah, but I mean, his business, and it's funny because he also humiliated himself this year with the whole Saudi stuff.
Yes, you know he hates this in his heart of hearts, but he has played along with it. But man, that Drew match last year in the Cell was awesome. Like I do have to give him credit for that. The feud went in some stupid directions with the friendship bracelet and all that.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, though, similar to what I just said about Sabu, to a lot of the WWE fans, a lot of WWE fans and a lot of Taylor Swift fans probably have a lot of crossover, Gerard. So if you're working a feud around a bracelet, I really think that connected with a lot of people in the WWE fan base.
Okay, now that you put it that way, actually, I could see that. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, obviously for us, we think this is silly, but I think for a lot of their fans, I think they bought into that a lot. And I mean, hell, he got his wife back into the company. Like at the end of the day, like all of this. So, who else did you say you were voting for? Moxley?
Mox? Yeah. I voted for him last year, and he's only added to his case. I mean, he eventually stabilized the Death Riders thing, and he just main evented another pay-per-view and another very lauded match against Darby Allin and everything like that. So, I mean, I think it's just, adding one thing after another.
I really think the Death Riders is a case of like, it ended, like his title run ended so good that people kind of forget the rest of it. Because if you try to put a storyboard of the Death Riders from a narrative perspective, there's so much inconsistencies like through it from the start to the end. It's somewhat similar to the Devil storyline in terms of like how many things got retconned and things changed.
Yeah.
Remember at the start where after they attacked Brian, they talked about the higher power was controlling them, and they had all the stuff with Orange, which was awful. The stuff at the World's End last year was terrible. The Cope stuff was like nobody liked that. I feel like once they got, the thing is, the Death Riders worked when Hangman won the number one contendership, because then we had a clear end date and a clear storyline they could have instead of changing things around every 5 minutes. Same thing with Yuta. At first he was kidnapped. At first he was against them. Then he was kidnapped. Then he was brainwashed. Then he was actually on their side. Then he was like AEW's Dominic. So it's like all of these things happened within the course of a few months. And we'll see where they go. I will say this: since he lost the title, Mox has shown that like this guy can work. Like this guy is a wrestler's wrestler at his core. And he's really proven that, because I think a lot of people forgot because of how dumb the storyline stuff was the last year. But he's really came in with that stuff with Danny Garcia. Those matches were really strong, man. And the stuff with Darby was great as well. I thought their promo leading up to the death match was like, or the I Quit match was fantastic that they did. So I just think that whole Death Rider stuff is a victim of like grandiose ideas that maybe weren't utilized effectively, when simpler stuff is more up his alley, like I would say. What about Cody? Are you gonna vote for him?
Yes. I mean, and I would just like to say, Mox, also, we have to take a look that now we've been over 6 years and a whole TV contract cycle with him being at the near the top for AEW for a lot of that time. A little shaky at times, obviously, but again, we're also thinking about how he helped establish the company and everything like that. So I think if you add all of that onto it, he's got historical influence for sure.
Yeah, and he's another one I really want to see 5 years from now. Like, I hate saying it. This is why I really don't jive with this category.
Well, Mox is 40 now.
He is, I guess, according to the 40-year unofficial limit that I put, he should be in. But I just want to see where he goes. Like, again, 5 years. I'm interested in that. Cody, it's really hard to argue against. He's another one that like, you have to really hate his wrestling to argue against him.
yeah, at this time, one of the hottest periods ever. So yeah, it's
Yeah, which he was directly impactful towards.
for
Like,
sure. Like
yeah, and a
whereas
lot.
because people sort of with Roman, they were like very like critical. It's like, well, did he really, or like, how long did it take for the bloodline to actually start getting going? It took like they were already like 2 years into it when it really picked up, right?
Yeah,
Whereas Cody was like bam hot, business changing from the beginning of him returning.
yeah, and I think like in a lot of ways, honestly, I think Cody's return to WWE was the unofficial start to the hottest they got. Like when that
Mhm.
music hit at WrestleMania, it felt like a shift change had happened in the company. The same way that, again, hindsight says that the Bloodline was this legacy story for WWE fans, but actually it wasn't that popular until Sami Zayn joined, and then everything
Right.
changed. And I feel like that way for the whole company. When Cody came back and that music hit at WrestleMania, and specifically that music, spoiler alert on Jim Johnson coming up later, imagine it came back and it had been some Def Rebel song, that would have made that return so much more flat if it wasn't that song. But when that
Yes.
music hit, though, it felt like the whole company changed, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
What about
Absolutely.
what about the Briscoes?
Yes, I did last year. I probably should have, but I thought about it. And I'm like, a consistent high level tag team, one of the best tag teams of the 21st century, and one of the best promos of the 21st
Yeah,
century, if you really think about it, right? So I
both of
think,
them.
and yes, and as much as tragic as everything was, they still were like a like a high level team for like almost 20 years, if not like around 20 years from when they debuted. So and lots of obviously not always on the biggest stage, but still but doing fairly well and having great matches in a lot of different promotions. So I think a lot of people would probably want to say they're slam dunks, but I think there's enough to get them over the hump, and I have decided to vote for them.
I think it's crazy when you consider their run as a true tag team for
Yeah,
2 decades. When you compare some of the legacy teams, like we talked about Toyota and Yamada, and again, their run was incredible. Like no
yeah,
doubt. But that was 3 or 4 years, and the
yeah,
Briscoes have 2 decades. Even Youngblood and another one that you had a few years. Like it's not like it was nothing, but it wasn't 2 decades worth of a tag team. But isn't that the
nope.
problem with American wrestling and tag teams? A lot of times these tag teams are meant to split up, and that's how it's gone for the last 35 years. Like the 80s with the Midnight Rock and Roll Express was really like the last time you saw major teams that just lasted and lasted. Most tag teams these days don't stick together, like for the way that the Briscoes did.
Well, it's sort of funny how you put that because, yeah, eventually, especially once you move into a weekly TV format, well, I mean, sort of the Raw format in the Nitro format. Obviously,
Yeah,
wrestling is
yeah,
always on weekly TV, but that sort of storytelling, then yes, every tag team was basically set up so they could break up.
yeah. Even the Shield, which is kind of like the WWE legacy group, so to speak. Like they break them up earlier than anybody thought. At the end of the day, um, to me, the Briscoes are like, if not the top candidate, like they're up there. Like the longevity, the in ring, the influence, like they check every box. And the in ring is really, really strong. Like I think they're. If you asked me to make a list of the top 15 teams of all time, they'd be in it. Just purely in ring. If we're doing a greatest tag team ever, like greatest wrestler ever, they're in my top 15. They might be top 10. Like I wouldn't put it past me to vote it for them.
No, I,
Uh,
I would absolutely agree that they could be in there for sure. I'd probably put maybe my top 15.
yeah, yeah.
Think about it, actually. I've never really thought about doing that for tag teams, but
Yeah, maybe
yeah,
that's something
I would
we
definitely
could
have them
work
on.
on. Yeah.
Yeah.
They actually did that on the 2016 one that I worked on. But it was like the ballots were like 25 tag teams, but it was really more an experiment. It wasn't as official as the singles list. Uh, but
Right.
I'll see if I can find my old ballot for that, and where I put them, but they were in there. I'm pretty sure, even in 2016. What about FTR, the another new face on the ballot?
Not yet.
Yeah,
Maybe at some point.
exactly. And that's the thing. Like, I totally agree with that. Like, nothing against them. They're a
Although,
great team.
if you actually think about it, were they having their sort of matches in NXT like in what 2016? So we're going on almost a decade, but I just
Yeah,
still feel like it's not ready yet.
yeah, exactly. And I do appreciate them though, because they're another team. I mean, like you said, going on a decade for a tag team in American wrestling is a big deal.
Okay, so they pop up on the Cage match guide beginning in 2015. Their first 8 or above or 4 stars from the Observer is in April of 2016. So yeah, we're going on a decade here.
How many other teams has there been in America that have lasted that long?
Just the Bucks.
Yeah, of the last like since they started, how many other teams started around that time and lasted to a comparable length in America?
Oh no! Oh, since they started, God, no one.
Okay, let's say
Who else is there?
2010 then. That's a 5 years before. They're probably the only team that you could think of that lasted that long, that started at least in 2010 or later.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know. Phoenix and Penta.
Yeah, that's exactly who I was thinking of. Like, if you wanted to count them, because they started in Mexico, obviously.
Yeah,
When was Lucha Underground? That was around 2015, right?
yeah,
Yeah, so that was
it
around
was.
then. They're kind of broken up right now, though. They haven't done anything in like 3 years of note as a team, to be fair.
They'll
But
probably be put back. Like
yeah,
given
we
how
all just
this
think
thing
that they're going to put things
works,
back together. Yeah.
they're gonna put them back together because, well, I mean, I feel like they've
Well,
already peaked in in WWE.
well, that's another thing in American wrestling. Teams are built to break up, but then also to come back together years later. Much like the Shield and even the Rockers when Jannetty came back in like '05. Like, they tried to put him and Michaels together again. So, like, that's another rule of American wrestling tag teams. Um, Anyone else on the U.S. modern that you're voting for?
Um,
And don't you dare say Cope.
no, I would never. I would never vote him or Orton. Actually, let me see who else is on that list
Rated
again.
RKO,
Uh, let,
another
let,
legendary tag team.
let's go for the never would vote. I actually considered voting for Dundee, but I feel like I'm going to vote for the other people first, and would never vote for Stratus, obviously.
I do. Okay, I'll say
uh,
this. I think Trish is a little over hated on by some people as like one
I
of the worst
understand.
candidates, but it's not. And I'm not saying I would vote for her, but I do think some people like talk about her like she's this all-time terrible candidate. She was influential to a not a high level, but to a level
Yes,
at least.
I
You know,
agree.
yeah,
Um, Matt and Jeff, I might have to next year after they
yeah.
drew.
They're another one where it's like it feels kind of wrong, but when you like really look at it, it's kind of hard to argue against
Yeah,
them.
especially now, even as
Yeah.
stupid and bad as it is, it's just like they're still doing business.
I know. And they to me, they're a legendary tag team. I said it earlier. Is so and so a legend is kind of like an unofficial category for me.
Yeah,
They're a legendary team. Like, there's no way you can argue that in my opinion.
yeah.
What about
Oh,
the
and
Steiners?
I don't know.
They just feel like short. They're
Just
kind of
feel a
like the
little
level
short.
below. Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know how they feel like Terry Gordy.
Yeah, that the Steiner list should be the tag team version of the
Yeah,
Gordon list.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
exactly how they feel to me. It's like they're the line almost.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, and you do get 6 votes in this category too, so you can load it up a little bit.
Should we? Oh, we already touched on this, but I just I'm not compelled by other people's Becky Lynch arguments. I'll just say that.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I'm sorry, Ethan. Like, Ethan Tyler really advocates hard for Becky, and
Oh, I know.
I,
Yes.
I get where he's coming from, and I like and respect him a lot. I'm not taking any kind of shot against him, but when he goes on about how there's been dissertations written about her and stuff, my immediate thought is like, that does not move me at all. At all. I'm sorry, man, on that end. And I still think that, like, if you're going to give her credit for that WrestleMania main event, you can't leave out Ronda. Like, I don't know
No,
if that's popular to say, but
no, it is
that,
not popular, but it's true.
but that's how the company looked at it. It's not about me.
And they
Like,
and they
yeah,
also ruined it with putting Charlotte
yes.
in there. And
Oh, I
and
hated that.
if
I
it's
hated that.
and if people get booked poorly, well, I'm sorry, but it's the career they have.
Well, and that's a kind of a case we're going to talk about some of these legends, like,
Yeah.
well, the historical candidates, like, spoiler alert on the Von Erichs. A lot of people are arguing like, oh, well, if things had gone differently, they were set to be the NWA champion and all of this. It's like we have to vote for how things are, not how we wish they were.
Right.
As Claire Obscura taught me this year. There, shout out, like, good reference. I'm sure some people caught that at first, but like we have to vote for how things happen, not what ifs. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
and that's kind of how I feel about Becky. Like at the end of the day, she made a bit of Mania, and then things totally bottomed out, and it was like one of their worst periods, like in a lot of ways.
It was both her and Seth were cold
Yeah.
in a month.
And Kofi that year too.
Yes.
And at least he had a hot buildup. Like
Right.
though, like like that at least worked. Like at the time, Becky didn't remember the end of that triple threat. They botched the finish in that match, and it was a dead finish. Man,
Yeah.
it was such a disappointing match because at the time I thought that match could be epic, like the first main event women's match, and then like you said, they put in Charlotte, and it was like, oh man.
I also have to say this. I think she's gotten better in the last couple of years, but Becky was also always overrated worker.
I like Becky. I really loved. We kind of mentioned Trish a second ago. Their cage match they had was one of the most underrated matches to me.
Like I said, I think she's gotten better, but back then.
Oh yeah. But back in 2018, no, that was such a down period. But you also have to consider. Yeah, you also have to consider that she was feuding with the Charlottes and Lacey Evans of the world, like too. Like you're not going to get a lot of great matches out of the people they were putting her against.
Well, see, here's the thing. When I started to turn the corner a bit on her work was when she went to NXT against.
I totally agree. Remember the match she had with Xia Li there? I thought that was like a really good match with Yeah, and Xia is like, I mean, shout out, obviously, like I'm Chinese, so I have a lot of love for her. But as a worker, she was super green at the time. She wasn't getting a lot of opportunities. And when they put their feud together with Becky, they did a great job. She worked her ass off to put people like her over, people like Tiffany Stratton over when Stratton was still green as grass. Becky helped her out a lot. And obviously Lyra, Valkyria, she did a lot for her as well. And their matches this year with her and Lyra were really strong. I watched their matches earlier for Wrestle Update, and their matches were really good together. And Lyra was more over than she'd ever been. I think Becky's done a great job the last couple of years. Even though, again, we also have to say they book her stupidly because they seem to be dead set, or maybe she herself wants this, but they're determined to turn her heel when nobody wants to boo her in this audience. And they do it constantly. And I don't understand why. But I like Becky, but she's not a top tier Hall of Famer to me. I would vote for Mercedes over her, like if just on this ballot alone. At the end of the day, historical era. There was only one new character this year. Sweet Daddy Siki. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I'm sympathetic to Sweet Daddy Siki because I have been to his karaoke nights in Toronto in the past.
Okay, yeah.
He's obviously very charismatic. I mean, he was doing this into his like 70s and early 80s. This was years ago, like a decade or so ago, but I believe he was doing it up till just before the pandemic. Like he had been doing it for a long time. He's a very charismatic and funny guy and everything like that. I went a couple of times and everything like that. So he's a bit of a legend in that way. Although I would not be. I would be interested. I think there's something to dig up in some of his runs in the early 1960s, but I don't think it quite all adds up. Although he was one of the few, probably for a period in the early 60s, one of the few black wrestlers that was a draw of any kind, though, in North America.
Yeah, I mean, and the story is why he moved up to Canada was because, he was married to a white woman, and that he thought that wasn't going to, he was probably right, that it wasn't going to fly in America at that time.
Yeah.
So he moved up to Canada and became a huge star there at the end of the day. I'd highly recommend some of the work of a historian named Greg Oliver, who spent a lot of time
Yeah.
with Sweet Daddy Siki. Did a lot of work and research on him, and he had a lot of glowing things to say about him. You look at his candidacy. I think it's interesting that he had, was not even on the ballot before, because he's a name I knew of. Obviously, we're talking about decades before I was born. So it's not like I lived through his run like a lot of the other great historians. These are guys that have been around the block, of that era. But he is a guy, he's another one. Maple Leaf Gardens, man. He was killing it. He had all kinds of numbers. And he had some good longevity starting in America, then up to Canada as well from the, the 50s. Again, maybe not Hall of Fame main event level from the 50s to the 80s, but he was a name through that time, and obviously his big run was really strong at the end of the day. Even he might be one of the few wrestlers Bret the Hitman Hart actually likes as well. So does that compel you to vote for him as well? Because he's praised him probably many times.
Yes, a bit. But I would say that I didn't get to do enough as much research this year as I would have liked, but I think I will have to go back and look at more for Siki, because I thought about it. I just didn't have the time, of course, and I was telling you off here I was having internet problems for a couple of weeks, so I just haven't had the time to do it. So he's someone I think he'll stay on. So I will definitely make an effort to figure things out for next year.
And the problem with this region talking about it's like we've kind of set our pieces on all these guys like that at this point. Do you have any? And obviously their cases are not changing. The people in this category. So, do you have any kind of changes or things that you've been swayed by, or any research that has come across in the past year?
Well, on my own front, Black Gorman and Great Goliath.
Yeah, they were another one that I looked up, and I was really impressed, like with a lot of their numbers.
So I'm going to vote for them, but most of my votes are the same. So I'll just be quick here. I'm voting for June Byers again. Wild Bull Curry. I am a JYD voter for the Shawns, because they were a big tag team in a lot of territories, particularly in like Winnipeg, Montreal, and the AWA for a long time.
To me, they're like among the best candidates, actually. Like
yeah,
this one, yeah,
for sure. Even though Mad Dog's already in there, but and deservedly so, of course. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to vote for the Von Erichs, actually.
Gerard. Another year leaving out Sputnik, my bro.
I know.
Okay, let me drop this on you, because I was doing a lot of research. First of all, like the first 4 picks we're like totally in lockstep on. Wild Bull Curry should be in this Hall of Fame. Like that's all there is to it. Like he was the trendsetter of hardcore wrestling. And the matches he had, and I saw the match with Johnny Valentine, I was like, whoa, like this was way better than I thought it was for a 1969 match. That was a hardcore match. Like they were really slugging it out there, man. Wild Boar Curry, man, he's a Hall of Famer. JYD, for sure, in my opinion, should be in. I know that his run, so, some people kind of denigrate him for like, oh, well, he was only really a draw in like 3 states. But when you're selling out the domes of Louisiana and you're a hero to all of these people for all of these years, it's kind of like a Takayama level thing for him, for me. It's like he's done everything it takes. Like he's checked every box during his time. I know it wasn't super long, decades long or whatever, compared to somebody like a Wild Bull Curry who was like, 30s to 70s. He was a main event player. Like, I'm not saying it was. And obviously people hold the WWF run against him, but man, he was just such a strong draw at his peak. And I like that too. One thing I'm happy about is I'm seeing more and more pushback against the narrative that like he was this totally terrible worker. If you look at him before he left, and before obviously a lot of his, drug problems that he had got a hold of him, he was not a bad worker in his early days. Like that's an
No, he was.
overrated talking point.
Yeah, he was good or to fine. It's
Yeah, I'm not saying he was like the next Bryan Danielson or anything like that, but he was a
yeah,
huge star. He wrestled really good. He knew how to work the crowd really well. At the end of the day, when you're seeing guys like him, Ted DiBiase at the time, uh, like their psychology was super strong, and he was a great big show wrestler too. Like when he was at the domes and all of that, and in main event matches, man, he could deliver. June Byers for sure should be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. I don't think there's any argument against her effectively. And she's somebody too that her reputation was really strong among the workers at the time. At the end of the day, now she was one of the first ones to have like main event styling matches at the time. At the end of the day, and I think that she for sure should be in. Big shout out again. Shout out to Ethan Tyler. This time, a statement I do agree with is Cowboy Bob. Uh, his drawing power. I did a lot of research into him because I was kind of skeptical at first. Last year I kind of sold Pampero Firpo as a better candidate, but I dug down into it for Cowboy Bob, and man, his work in Australia, where he was a big star in Barnett's territory, I think that puts him over the top, and something I didn't even see talked about that much compared to the American run. This guy was a worldwide draw in Australia at the time, and I think that Cowboy Bob Ellis. The thing is, like Wild Bull was an innovator, the hardcore icon pretty much of his time. And Danny McShane's in, so I don't really understand how he isn't when you look at that. Cowboy Bob Ellis, the thing is, the cowboy gimmick was around before and after him, but he did use it to draw really strong, in his time, and I think he deserves credit for that. So he's somebody I think should be in. Uh, and Sputnik. Um, the thing is, I was looking up him, and obviously everyone knows that he was the star to help desegregate Memphis, and obviously for a Memphian like myself, I'm going to be drawn to that. I've said it before. My sixth grade teacher that I had told me about seeing him at those bars on Beale Street in the black neighborhoods at the time, and watching him get arrested, for that being illegal. As terrible as that is, he was the one that really was a part of that, and some people have claimed that, and probably accurately, like to be honest, like pretty much accurately, that obviously the promoter was a big part of this whole deal too, because he wanted to desegregate it, but he was worried about heat, so he got a heel to do it for him, pretty much. The Welch family and all of that. But he was still the one who did it. Again, we can't vote on what ifs. He did it. Like it wasn't somebody else; it was him. At the end of the day. And I looked at a lot of his stuff outside of Memphis when he left in the early 1960s. He was getting NWA title shots against Pat O'Connor in Texas and Arizona and stuff like that. It's not like he just came through and he was a big guy for 5 months and then he left and we never heard of him again. He was in big spots like throughout the 60s, throughout the Southwest. And I think that doesn't get acknowledged enough at all when you're talking about a guy who was getting NWA title shots at the time. As well as not only that, drawing between 15 and 20,000 fans in his own right in the peak of Memphis, in the Jack Dempsey match that they had when Jack was the special referee. But nevertheless, I just think his candidacy is kind of underrated, like in a lot of ways, because people just focus so much on the desegregation, which is important and super relevant historically. But man, he had some good numbers for him, like in Memphis and even later on. At the end of the day, I think like he's a really, really good vote, in my opinion, at the end of the day. But as far as the Von Erichs, what do you think of them not really getting that much of a bump last year after the movie? Because I thought they would get in last year after the Iron Claw came out, but it just didn't materialize. Man, what's going to happen with them going forward? I wonder.
Oh no, the more I think about it, the more I've like they should just be in there as the trio because of everything. And I wanted to hold off on that, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting soft or something. But yeah,
That's
I
okay.
tried.
We'll see what
I felt
happens.
like I needed to. Yeah.
I like the Gorman and Goliath shout out though. That was a good one. I also think the Pampero Firpo is an underrated candidate in my opinion.
I think he is too. Very sort of influential, but I'm like, because I actually voted for him before the first year I had a ballot, and I just feel it's like, well, there's something there, but it's like sometimes for someone like him who was not exactly a household name, it's a little hard to gauge how much of an influence he actually was. I mean, it's clearly there, but at the same time, it's also hard to completely tell at the same time.
I also love the point that Brian Solomon made on the Voice of Wrestling show that he did. Because I actually had the exact same thought of Firpo. Because you hear all these stories and you read all of these tales and you see these promos he cut where he was this Macho Man before Macho Man, pretty much. And it's like, in my mind, Pampero Firpo was like this 6'11" guy. But then I watch his matches and it's like, dude, we're not that different in size. What the hell? like you're not that big, but he just had this aura about him that made him seem like this monster. But I'm a big fan of his. Drew big in Detroit and in Hawaii and all over the place. Was a noteworthy star, even going his tour in Japan. In All Japan in 1980, he was in the main events a lot and did some big numbers with teaming as one of Bruiser Brody's tag partners, and he's a guy that really is a good candidate in my opinion. But there's a lot of good names here, and it's going to be tough. Rest of the world, you get Europe, Australia, New Zealand, everywhere, pretty much besides Japan, Mexico, and the U.S. We had the old guys before. Have you voted on this category before?
Oh yeah, and I'm voting again.
So we got some new guys coming in. Steve Gray, which is somebody I actually emailed Dave about in years past.
Okay.
But now he gets on. So shout out to Steve Gray. I do want to publicly apologize to the Countout Network who asked me to do a show on the ballot for Steve. I wasn't able to get to you this year, but I promise I'll make it up to you guys in the future about him or anybody else y'all want me on. Because a big shout out to Countout Network. Go listen to their shows. My friend Jess hosted Jumping Knee Pod on there, but they have the ballot, which is a great Hall of Fame focus show all year. And they have a lot of other cool shows there too. So check them out, please. I really wanted to shout them out and apologize publicly for not doing better. It's just been a long year for me, guys, to be honest. But Steve Gray, he's on the ballot. Les Kellett, Gilbert LeDuc, and Ted Boy Marino. I love candidates like Ted Boy Marino, personally, because like his stories are so like specific at the end of the day, where it's like he was the hero of telecatch in Brazil, which is something that has no imprint in the modern era, pretty much. But you get to see it. Like this is to me is the real purpose of the Hall of Fame, in my opinion, to keep these kind of legends alive and to honor people that wouldn't get it otherwise. Because there's no reason for us to be talking about Ted Boy Marino other than the context of the Observer Hall of Fame. And I love that we get to do it this year. What do you think about him?
I thought about it. I just, like I said, this was a year where I just didn't have a lot of time to research.
Yeah.
Maybe I will before because it's not due till November 8th. I'm sort of fascinated by the little I've seen about Brazilian wrestling. It's like got its own. Well, I mean, it's all the only stuff I've seen is from like the middle of the 80s. It's just got a vibe all its own, right? Pretty wild.
Yeah, it's kind of like it was as I understand it. It was filmed in like a TV studio, which is very similar to some of the Argentina clips I've seen before. I've never actually seen any of Telecatch. I saw a couple of clips of Ted Boy when I was researching him, but it wasn't there. I couldn't find any like full matches, but it felt like a real TV production at the time, and that's kind of what a lot of the research says about Telecatch in general. And basically, it came across like the head of the government in Brazil at the time thought that like Telecatch was this threat to the public, is how it was said. It was too violent. But from a lot I could tell, a lot of it was very like cartoonish accent. It wasn't Wild Bull Curry and Johnny Valentine. Like, let me tell you. But yeah, he was by far the top star. Got a great story. And he's like the hero of an entire culture and country of wrestling. Like, obviously, it doesn't have worldwide impact, but to me, that counts. Like, that should count. If you are the top guy of an entire region, and a guy who lasted as a celebrity afterwards and became a top star outside of wrestling, that to me says a lot about your legitimacy as a Hall of Famer, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And
What what about Gilbert Leduc?
no, but again, that's more of a like I like the French catch I've seen. Um, but I don't know enough.
I love his wrestling a lot, actually. Like, I think he's a really, really great wrestler, to be honest. Um, as a Hall of Famer, I think that it's going to be tough to get him through because when I look at this rest of the world ballot, there are some heavy hitters on here. Like, this is a hard category. And there are another ones somewhat similar to Mexico where it feels like everyone's just kind of mashed in. There aren't really any bad candidates to me. I mean, outside of Adrian Street, but for the most part, like all of these guys are really, really great candidates. The stuff he was doing with guys like Korn and Hanker, um, the guy like Burt Michael, like Rocco Lambon. I mean, like he wrestled the top of the top guys of his style. Was a big star in all kinds of French territories, including in Canada, of course.
He did have a very long career too. I mean, he's got longevity in there.
Yeah, 40s to 70s, pretty much. Like he was a guy that was very well respected. He was a great slugger, man. I was a big fan of Gilbert Leduc there, and he's very important again for that territory. And I guess it just depends. Because some people I think will downplay Quebec or Brazil and say that it doesn't mean as
No,
much. But
Montreal is very important.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, we talked about the Vajans earlier and Johnny
Yeah.
Rougeau last year. Like Leduc is great. Like he's a really great candidate. But if you didn't vote him in, it's really there's a lot of great candidates in this region, in my opinion.
Let me put this into perspective for Montreal. Andre the Giant chose to buy into the territory because of how big it was.
Mhm. That's
And
right.
become
It's always listed as among the top like allies of the WWF too. Like when they would walk
yeah.
in.
So
thinking,
and someone like Andre is not going to just invest his money in a promotion that wasn't going to be successful or anything.
Les Kellett, do you have any thoughts on him?
Nope.
He's a guy that was big in England, ITV and stuff. Um, I think that the tough part with him is that you're not, and it's a problem with Gray in a lot of ways too. The product was so TV centric at the time that it's hard to find dome level shows or anything like that. But he was somebody that's always a lot on top there at his time. Like he was always pushed as a big star, main event guy. He was more like a comedic wrestler in a lot of ways too. Somewhat similar to a Jim Breaks type of guy. Like in terms of style, like his in-ring style. He was more of a charismatic type of guy than a pure, like Steve Gray was like the ultimate technician, straightforward guy. Les Kellett was more of a charismatic guy at the end of the day. But he had some great stuff with Leon Aris. I know that he was big. He had a great feud with somebody like a Kendo Nagasaki, who's been on the ballot before, and Adrian Street, who's on the ballot now. So you've got a lot of good stuff there. Whatever you can find, and a lot of that stuff out there, it's not as barren as you might think this era for British wrestling. So he's a good candidate. I wouldn't say I would vote for him though in this bracket. Steve Gray, yeah, go on.
I was going to say, would you say though that Billy Joyce is the strongest Brit on the ballot?
I think you could definitely make that case.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Okay, so it's Gray. I think he's the best worker that Britain's ever had. Like, I think in terms of purely in ring, he's my favorite one to watch out of anyone. And I think he deserves respect as one of the greatest of all time. In 2016, in my greatest wrestler ever list, I had him right around 25. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it was around that era. area, where he was in that top 30 range, which is right around the cut it would take to be a pure work rate case for me to vote for a Hall of Famer. Like an Ishii or Yuki Ishikawa. Not that he's on the ballot, although I wish he was, because I love ballots.
Oh,
Like, Gray is right up there with me. I absolutely love his matches. I think he's much better than Johnny Saint, in my opinion. And there's a lot of his matches out there. The stuff he did with Cortez is great. There's like dozens of great matches with him, man. The problem is, there's really not a lot else there. You know, his biggest moment of fame was kind of like being Big Daddy's right-hand man, which would make him getting inducted hilarious. If that, I don't think he'll get in at all, but if that did happen, I cannot wait to see the Big Daddy lovers' reaction to that. To see like his sidekick basically get in above him, which would be hilarious. And in terms of significance, he was influential, but really not to the level of a Johnny Saint, because whether I like him better or not, whatever I think of Mike Quackenbush as a human being, he watched those tapes of Johnny Saint and picked him, and that's what led to his influence becoming so strong in the indie scene of the 2000s. Like we have to admit
it wasn't just Quack.
Right, I know, but I like making fun of Quackenbush.
Yeah.
But obviously, even Brian Danielson, and listen, Brian Danielson did The Lady of the Lake. That's Johnny Saint's one of his signature spots, man. And he wrote in his book about how much he loves World of Sport. But I think Gray is a better worker, and he's somebody that I think is worthy of a look as a pure work rate candidate, but I just don't think the other two are there at the end of the day. It's kind of like Hayabusa for work. Like the influence is great, and it's so strong you could definitely vote for him, but I don't think the other two you would vote a yes as a Hall of Fame for Gray on. Although, again, he was the right-hand man, and it's not totally worthless, but it's just not... He wasn't the level of star, and you also have to remember that he was a smaller guy at a time when Big Daddy was the top star, and the big guys were overshadowing him. But I love his work. Please watch his matches if you're listening to this. Go look them up. I promise they're good. Other people on the ballot, who's got your eye here? Because now it's funny because at first Dave actually left off Adrian Street, which was the correct decision in my opinion, but he fixed it and put him on, and now he upped it up to 4 that you could vote for this. So who do you got here?
Oh, he changed the ballot?
He put Adrian back. He forgot. He didn't change it. He just forgot to put Adrian when he sent out the ballot at first, but he put it on. He fixed it. It was a simple mistake.
Now it's 4 choices?
Yes.
Okay, well, let me just add someone to the list. Okay, well, why don't we go over my choices here?
Yeah.
I've got Spiros Arion, Jose Taras, Otto Vons, and George Gordienko.
By the way, Arion is the only person on any category who is subject to the 50% rule this year. If he gets less than 50%, he's off. But if he gets more, then he'll stay on, even if he doesn't get to 60.
Yeah, I mean, I think between Australia and the WWF, I think Arion should get in there. I mean, Jose Taras should have been on in '96.
Yeah,
in terms of just all of the crazy drawing he did in Spain and elsewhere in Europe. Otto Vons was a big star for a long time, and I think people overlook that. He did some good business with CWA at points. Wasn't that great of a worker or anything like that, but I mean, he has cultural cachet in Germany and Austria, and has longevity, and was like sort of the big star in continental Europe. So I feel like he should get a little more love. And then George Gordienko has just this incredible international career, and probably would have been the NWA World Champion if he could get into the United States.
The thing is with this ballot to me, or this region, Taras and Gordienko are slam dunk candidates. 10 out of 10. Like, if you came on here and didn't put them in your 4, I'd look at you like, huh? Like, now, wait a minute. I mean, we'd have to have a discussion on this. And I would say that about any voter. They should 100% be voted in, both of those guys. The other two, again, I kind of like all the candidates on this region. And I think they all have cases. Arion, like you said, Australia, as well as being a big draw in the U.S., is going to help him. One of Bruno Sammartino's big opponents at the time
Mhm.
in the Tri-WF. So he has a lot of great stuff about him. Man, that Australia region, that's another thing I discovered when I was looking at Cowboy Bob and all of them. And even Furpo was doing some stuff there. That
Yeah.
Australia Barnett region was booming in the 60s. It's like so much like big stuff was happening there. And he was a big part of it. I mean, you have guys like KKK here. He was a part of the Australia Killer
Yep.
Carl Cox. Dominic DiNucci was a part of that as well.
Yep.
So there's a lot of good candidates on here. So really, there's no really bad options on the other two. I'm a huge fan of the Royal Brothers as workers. Like every time I've seen them go back, I think they were like supremely talented and way underrated historically. And I think Vic Faulkner, if he were a singles guy, he'd be up there as among the best on his own. But Burt was good too. Obviously, they are brothers. They were big TV stars at the time. Uh, I was finding out how the Beatles were fans of theirs too. Even there, I found some pictures of them online together. The Beatles hanging out with the Royal Brothers, uh, and they were just great workers, man. I think that they deserve a lot of looks for this. Um, but it really comes down to taste at that point. What you said about Otto Wands was totally true, I thought. And I think he's a guy that deserves it as well. I would probably go with the first three that you said, and then the last one's kind of that wild card choice, really. I think about the Royal Brothers, but I also think Ted Boy has an amazing case. And I think for like you don't want to vote with your heart in something like this, but I do
Right.
think that Ted Boy is somebody that deserves to at least stay on another year because I think a lot of people have your issue, actually, Gerard, where I think some people, he slipped through the cracks of new guys to research. And I'd like another year for people to look at his story more. And I know that his sons actually are working on a documentary about him, trying to get that processed in the modern area. I'm hopeful that that could come to pass in the next year. Maybe that could help some people too on there.
Well,
So
Ted Boy
great
also
region.
released an album, so I'm sure
That
it's helped.
another one that released an album, Ted Boy Marino, absolutely right. There. So I think that is the true key to the Observer Hall of Fame is who released CDs back to time. Are you voting in the Mexico region?
For the first time ever, yes.
Cool. So the Infernales are back on. What's your take in general? This is one you get 3 maximum for Mexico. So who you
Well,
got
see,
here?
this is where I am. I have 2 of my 3. I'm a little iffy on my last one.
Okay, let's talk about
So
it, Gerard.
let's
Maybe
we'll
I'll
talk.
solidify it for you.
So I for sure I've got Dory Dixon and Gran Hamada.
Those are the exact 2 I was going to say that because I thought the same thing as you. There are 2 that I think should 100% be in, and then a lot of really great candidates below him. And the 2 you
And
said are
I'm
exactly the 2
split
I would say.
between Sangre Chicana and Los Infernales, but also I've been very persuaded by like the Cubs fans Volador Jr.'s argument.
Mhm. Well,
'Cause he's
uh,
he's been a star for a while and is top worker and everything. And it's like, maybe.
the thing is, this is similar to rest of the world, where I think they first of all again, if you did the ballot where it was like yes or no, abstain on everybody, I think there's like set at least 5, 6, 7 guys that you could vote for, and for me, I think that Masquerita Sagrada is a total Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Like the absolute best of his class. Like, his weight class really changed the entire game for many wrestlers in Mexico for decades to come to this day. And
You're
was
right.
an
Yeah.
was an incredible worker. But here's the thing. Sangre Chicana to me is one of the best Mexican workers ever. Like, at the end of the day, he is the personification of the lucha brawl style to me. His match versus MS Uno is one of the greatest matches in Mexican history, in my opinion. Just a complete emotional, bloody masterpiece, I would say. Uh, Icon still draws when they bring him in. They brought him into AAA like 7, 8 years ago, and he was like super old at that point. He still drew to he helped pop AAA for a little bit back then in the late 2010s. I think that he's a guy that has a big influence on brawlers to this day in Mexico as well. So if it were me, he would be my third, but I think Los Infernales totally would be a great vote. I think Mascarita Sagrada would be a great vote. Volador is a guy, I mean, he's been around forever. So it's hard to say, oh, I really want to see where he'll be in 5 years. It feels like the sun's kind of setting on him as a main guy.
Yes.
But they did make a good point. Him and Rocky helped draw fans for outsiders to Mexico. And that was just last year. So
that was just like, yeah, that's been his most recent hurrah. Yeah.
I'm not as big of him as a worker as I am Sangre Chicana, to say the least. But at the end of the day, he's been at it for decades now. It feels like it's a matter of time before he'll get in. I think he does belong at the end of the day. The big crime, though, I said this last year, and I want to bring it up again, and I hope somebody hears me, and maybe, like you said, you've got the inside track with Dave. Maybe you could push this along to him that I said this. I mean, I guess I could email him to myself if I wanted, but like Blanco and Wagner, why is it not the trio with Solitario? Like, I don't get it. Like, I really don't, because they are a surefire Hall of Fame trio. And not that them as the team isn't great too, because I mean they did turn on him eventually. But I really think the case for the trio is much stronger if you research that with Ola Blanca. So I mean, I don't know why it's that way. I don't hate them at all. I think they're really good candidates. But I really think if the Solitario was a part of the trio, they'd probably be in the top 3 for me. So I did want to say that. It's very good that you're voting on that, though. I hope that Dory and Hamada both get in because I think they deserve it. Also, personally, I don't think he's as strong as other guys, but I do think El Dandy is one of the best Mexican workers ever. Like, I know they were kind of downplaying him on the VOW show, but I think as a wrestler in ring, his matches he had with Satanico, his matches he had with Negro Casas later on in his career were really, really, really match of the year level. Some of the best in Mexican history, too. So I'm a huge Dandy fan. I wouldn't say he's as strong as some of these other candidates, but I do think he deserves to be on the ballot. So, one more category, non-wrestlers. This is one that's always very confusing to me personally because you have to categorize all these different styles of people. But the new guys are returning people too coming in. Bill Mercer, Gorilla Monsoon, and Jesse Ventura that were not on last year. What do you make of this? Has the highest amount of people. You get 7 votes in this category, but it still feels so stacked that it's hard to determine. To me,
it's true because I used up all 7 and 9. I'm like, there's other people I could vote for.
Yeah, it's like the other regions, like I just said about the last 2 we talked about. It's like if they just let us vote for everybody, there'd be at least 10 people in my yes bucket for this.
Yeah, for sure. So I went with Bobby Bruns, Gorilla Monsoon, Morris Siegel, Ted Turner, Jesse Ventura, Roy Welch, and Koichi Yoshizawa.
That is a damn fine ballot, Gerard, because that's like 6 of the 7 I had from mine as well.
Well, I'm going to start and just talk about Yoshizawa because I don't really see a lot of people, except for Dave, making a case for him, but I agree with it. I probably wouldn't be sitting here with you right now without him.
I know. And see, this is the thing about this category, okay? And I totally 100% think he should be in. Yeah. You get candidates like him, candidates like Jim Johnston, candidates like James Melby, who do these different things. Weston is a guy I've always advocated for based on the fact of, listen, if Bill Apter's in, then there ain't no way Weston shouldn't be in too. There's no argument you can make that he should not be in and Apter should be ahead of him. So, but these are all different guys that do very, very different things. And I love that they get a chance to be represented. I almost kind of wish that all of that put into a separate category away from the commentators and the people we see. Like, there should be a category for people who never appear on camera, I guess, if I could change it that way to help somebody like
Yeah,
a
that makes sense.
Koichi. Yeah, because Koichi, he's struggling in the polls, but he's so vital to wrestling history,
Yeah.
and people just don't know about it for some reason.
So to put it in perspective, like, he's the reason that people in the United States knew more about Japanese wrestling than they knew about wrestling in other countries that also spoke English. Because he
Yeah,
was in contact with people like Dave and Tanay and other people in the media and sending them reports, and they were sending him back reports to Japan about what was happening in the States.
absolutely. And think about that when you really think about it, because maybe some people are like, all he did was send results. But it's so much more than that, because compare the coverage of Japan to the coverage of Mexico, which has an equally rich history and has so many great wrestlers that never got the same amount of love from the tape traders. And I think another thing about this too, Gerard, I think a lot of people from that era, the tape trading era.
Well, to be fair, there was Japanese TV stuff that was available when there was very little lucha on TV.
Well, that's true. And a lot of that's the TV network. Although I'm still waiting for that underground vault that Televisa allegedly has. Me and Fredo Esparza are still looking for that together. Sorry, I rooted for the Dodgers for him, Fredo. I rooted against the Dodgers rather. But he was so vital in that, and I think a lot of the people nowadays, they can't even imagine how things were back then.
Right.
They just know how things are. It's hard for a lot of these younger, newer voters to quantify that. And not that we're not younger voters anyway, or you were a voter anyway. But like, you understand the history of why something like that changed the entire face of coverage that lasted for decades and decades and decades to this day. It's one of the things why I've always said, I think one of the biggest mistakes the Observer voters have ever made was when Kadani got dropped off the ballot. Like, to
I
me,
agree.
without him, so much would have changed because we wouldn't have seen Okada's rise at the time. Who knows what would have happened even in the company? Like, it might not have caught fire the way it did, and maybe Dave didn't catch it at the right time, and maybe the coverage changed. So it shows how much. I've always said, I know I'm about to say something super controversial to a lot of people. I don't know if you even agree with this, but I'm going to lay it all out there. I've had some hot takes on tonight, Gerard. It hasn't been, I haven't played it safe. I think the next person that should be nominated in the non-wrestler category is Dave Meltzer. Because I think that he's had such an influence on so many companies over the years, not just New Japan, but remember when he gave that huge rating to Shuri and Utami? And we got the numbers the next month. Stardom World went up like a huge amount of new subscribers came in after that big rating and him talking about it so much. And the Lucha Libre has gotten much more advanced in terms of fans from outside of Mexico since he started covering it more and more. And he's always talked about it here and there, but it's really grown and grown. And I really think Dave, man, he is an interesting person to talk about his influence on the business in a non-wrestler category.
No, I actually agree with you. It's funny, although to be fair, and I have a lot of respect for Dave, but to be fair, there are those of us that are also sending him stuff to see, and he does feed off of some of the more hardcore devoted fans, whether it's Mexico or Japan or something, right?
I know this well. Back to the Pro Res Spirit days, my friend.
Yeah.
On here. But I still though, regardless of that, his name is the one that influences.
It's okay. Funny story. I got Dave to watch Big Japan.
Oh, really? Tell us about this, Gerard. What match was this?
It was Yuya Aoki versus Yuji Okabayashi.
Good.
From was it 2023?
Yeah, that was a couple of years ago now. That must have been at the tail end though with Anzai. Yeah, or like the tail end of the year for if it was an Anzai match. But
no,
yeah.
Yuya Aoki versus.
Oh, Aoki, yeah. No, that match was great. Yeah, him and Okabayashi.
May 4th or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, May 5th show. Yeah. Okay, I remember.
5th, yes. Yeah. No, And that's funny because I told him, it's like, this is like, because obviously Big Japan it's been in a rut basically since the pandemic, and this was like a harkening back to like 20 between like 2014, 2015, 2016, and I just raved about it and everything, and then I sent him a very completely legal Google Drive link,
I fully believe that.
and yeah, he reviewed it.
Good. Like I said, very good. Man, okay, I wish that guy would get signed somewhere, like go somewhere else, because I think he deserves a bigger spotlight.
Well, yeah, he's sort of been completely de-emphasized in Big Japan from what I can see.
Yeah, he had a good run. And I do love the coverage you have on Flowshow when you guys talk about Big Japan on
Well,
there.
look, I can't sit down and watch whole Big Japan shows, but I will watch the main matches.
It got me back into watching because I had stopped watching it entirely for a while there. But when you started to bring it up again, I followed along with you. I didn't want you to leave me behind, Gerard. At the end of the day, um, but yeah, Koichi, very important, and I think that all of the historians and stuff like that deserve to be in, but it's hard to quantify their impact directly. So for me, the promoters, Welch and Siegel, are like slam dunk 100%. I can't believe it. and I think that Siegel will get in at least this year. Maybe both of them will. But I think a lot of people have kind of realized, hey, why is he not getting in the Hall of Fame? Like, why is he not in yet? And I think it's time for him to get in, and I really, really hope he does. And I think getting those two out would actually clear up the region a lot, because those are two heavy hitters, along with Bobby Bruns, another one that's an amazing candidate. Again, everyone always talks about the Ricky Dozon stuff and helping bring wrestling to Japan, which is enough on its own for sure. But he was again another one of Kansas's top bookers when he came back afterwards.
St. Louis.
Or St. Louis, excuse me. Missouri, somewhere along there. But like,
Missouri.
Yeah, but like he was one of the top bookers for St. Louis, and then in Missouri and all of that. So he has. This guy should be in the Hall of Fame, Gerard. Like I don't understand how he's not. It was like Bobby Davis, where it's like, again, I really have no issue with guys who didn't make the original list because that's a tall undertaking to sit down and quantify the entire history of wrestling and all the biggest stars of every year. So of course some people will slip through the cracks, not just for Dave, but if anybody made it, if you, me, anybody. But he's one of the ones that should have been on from all three of them, like that I mentioned, should have been on from the beginning. But to me, they're like super slam dunk candidates, should 100% be in. I agree with you on Jesse and Gorilla, even though I always want to say Dave Brown should be in because of what he means to the city. Well, but he should be in. He should be in, but we only have 7 votes. So here's my argument. I think everyone agrees Jesse's one of the best. But the funny thing about him is that people don't really commentate like he does. And I've heard this brought up too. He's not that influential because nobody else can do what he does that has come along afterwards, I feel like. The candidacy of Tenay was strong with that. But also, I do think you could say, I did say earlier that whatever works, works. But I also think that the modern day commentary actually doesn't work and makes their shows worse a lot. So at the same time, so I wish that they were as good as he was. People like Excalibur, no offense intended, but it is what it is at the end of the day. But Ventura, he doesn't really have those kind of imitators as much. And here's my argument for Gorilla Monsoon. To me, he reminds me. I don't know if you're a big comic book fan, Gerard, but there's a saying among like comic historians. The reader who only reads one comic thinks Superman is the best hero. Mm-hmm. The reader who reads 100 comics thinks Superman sucks as a hero. And the reader who reads 1,000 comics thinks Superman's the best hero. And that's what I feel about Gorilla. It's like you look at him with innocent eyes, the people who grew up in his era or saw him on Blockbuster videotapes, like some people I know. Right. You look at him as a kid, you think, man, this guy gets it. Like, he really speaks for the fans, and you love him, and you think he's great. And then when you get older, you go back and watch those shows and think Ventura is way better and Monsoon is kind of cheesy, over the top. He's not that good of a broadcaster. But then eventually it kind of circles back around. And I got to really shout out because I was thinking about it. As much as I do love a Dave Brown, and I do think him and Lance were the best team of all time, but Monsoon was a part of objectively some of the absolute biggest calls of all time. I mean, how many times, Gerard, have you heard the unstoppable force meets the immovable object? You know,
Yes,
like how many
exactly.
times have we heard those kind of those calls that he made? Like, say what you want about him, but he made those big matches and moments legendary. Um, Let me ask you one question philosophically about him and Jesse, and maybe some others too. Where do you stand on the idea of counting their in-ring wrestling as a part of, even though they're on the non-wrestler ballot? Because
Well,
Monsoon was a legendary wrestler before he was a commentator as well.
I think you should count it, but I was also going to say for Monsoon, you also have to count him as a business person. Uh,
Yep.
he he ran. He basically was the day-to-day runner of WWF under Vince Senior, and I believe he bought into Puerto Rico,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and you guys can check out more. There's a new book that got released about him recently too, by Brian Solomon, who's a
Yeah,
like esteemed author, and he was on one of the shows we talked about earlier. But he wrote Gorilla Monsoon's book, and a lot of that was about all of the inner workings and all the stuff that he did both in and out of the ring. But I
yeah.
just wanted to see
So
your opinion
there's,
on the philosophical
but yes,
part of it.
I would vote for Gorilla based on that. There's not much to Jesse in ring other than promos and a
Yeah,
bit of his tag team with Adrian Adonis.
yeah. But he was one of the best. Would you vote for him too?
Oh, Jesse, yes, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And one of the best commentators. Rather, not maybe not the best wrestler, but I haven't seen that much of his wrestling. What I did see was pretty bad. I do understand. But as a commentator, I think he's amazing. And I did like the point. I forget who said this, but somebody brought up like him fighting for the rights, like for the checks afterwards and stuff. That
Oh,
probably
that's
drew.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, that drew more money for wrestlers than potentially anyone. Um, what do you think? At Ted Turner, we both agreed a million times. Like, you cannot tell the story of wrestling without him. WCW doesn't exist without him. He should be in the Hall of
Yeah.
Fame. Like, that's it.
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
it doesn't mean it'll be
I
a
know
long conversation.
you're really moved by the. I mean, well, like I said, Vince Senior was hands off. He let Gorilla do the day to day work. Does that mean Vince Senior shouldn't be in?
Yeah, to me, it's just not a very moving argument. I totally agree with you on that one. Um, what do you think of? I'll throw a couple of more guys out here. What do you think of Jim Johnston? Because I loved the point that I didn't even think about, but I listened to a show with John Pollock, my friend, and a legendary podcaster and journalist, like one of the few true journalists of wrestling. He did a show
Mhm.
with David Bixenspan, and they brought up that nobody thinks about it, but the CDs he made in the 90s and early 2000s, some of those went gold and platinum and probably made the
Yep.
company millions of dollars. And I never even thought of that before, but I was like, yeah, those CDs were super hot like at those times.
No, I agree with that. I think I've voted for him before. It just comes down to who I want to prioritize.
Yeah,
But I
exactly.
agree.
You only get seven.
And it's only whatever, however you make money for the business is fine. Like, because you have to sort of evolve in how you think about it, because obviously it's less of a touring business now, and you have to like who's a ratings draw, who helps get more zeros at the end of that contract. Those are things that you
Yep.
have to take into account these days that you didn't 40, 50 years ago.
Totally agree with that. Um,
Which also helps someone like Mercedes, because she has
yep,
been a ratings mover in the past, right?
that's exactly right.
She
At
was
the end.
doing bigger ratings than Roman was at the beginning of the Bloodline. before
All true.
Sammy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all true. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, do you, somebody that I looked at a lot and I wanted to talk about a little bit was George Scott. Um, I think he's a guy that like he's one of these that people have really had hot and cold opinions on him in the past, and it really feels like they hold that run against him at the end. And it's like when you look at a lot of what he did, um, I just think that he really deserves a better look for how much he put together. What's your opinions on him? Like, are you holding the WWF run against him, or no? Excuse me, the late run and JCP against him, or
No. I just like obviously very influential at the time and a very key moment. I just um to me he just comes in a little under on some of the other ones, right? Like just in terms of my willingness or my priority of voting for him. But I don't
right,
necessarily, it takes a lot to hold um someone back or to I guess what I'm trying to say is to knock them down some pegs for some poor stuff later. Like I didn't knock down Goldberg a peg because of his retirement, but his retirement also didn't force me to have to acknowledge it, right? As a plus,
right,
even if I don't look at it as a minus. So to me, it's just like there are more pluses for other people that get me over the hump on this one, and I'm just not feel the need to put it on Scott. But I don't think the end of it should I mean, he tried to get like some control like what am I trying to say? He's trying to get people to clean up in the WWF in the 80s from all
yeah,
the drugs, right? Which I
yeah,
think also put a target on him.
yeah,
But
yeah. That didn't help him. I mean, his run
that
there was only 3 years, but it was big
yeah.
though. Like he was really credited a lot as the architect of Hogan in those eras, and, and some of his biggest feuds like Hogan and Orndorff. He was really around for that.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean,
Well,
who's to say? You could argue that
no, I mean, of course, yeah,
yeah, for you got Vince but he plays a role in the early WrestleMania and Saturday night's main event, the beginnings of it, everything like that, right? So,
and a lot of that was
you know,
also with the Rock and Wrestling with the MTV and all that stuff. Like they were doing a lot of stuff to really get in there to make them a national company at the time.
mhm.
Uh, but I mean, his Mid Atlantic stuff does deserve love too. I mean, he was really architecting the Flair and Steamboat stuff in the '70s. Valentine and Wahoo was a big feud that drew, and when he came in, we see the difference from when he started to when he was taking over in Charlotte, Greensboro, all of that. Like he made a big difference. They were drawing 10,000 fans, pretty often at that time, and they weren't doing
Mhm.
that before he got there. So I do think he's a guy that deserves some love. Uh, I think about it a lot. Is all I'm saying. One more person, and we'll wrap this up after. Has your opinions changed or grown or differentiated in any way with Rossi Ogawa?
Um, no. And just to go back what I just said is I think a lot of people look down on Marigold, but I think I'm not surprised where Marigold is given its level of talent.
Yeah,
Um, although my interest in it has decreased because a certain someone has left. Uh,
I agree. I agree. like, no one agrees with you more than me, Gerard, on that.
but if you look at the initial people who left and the fact that Julie was only going to be there for a limited amount of time, and she got injured while she was supposed to be on her farewell tour in Marigold, basically. I'm not surprised they're doing the kind of business they are, and I feel like they're starting to show signs of life because I'm not particularly surprised it took a time like Victoria and Kazuna and everything are finally getting their footing,
Yeah,
and Sari. Um, so and it's actually And if you actually think about it, there was less star power on this Sumo Hall show than there was on the last Sumo Hall show.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
they did
Io was
that.
there for the first one.
Yeah. Now Mayu wasn't, but you also had Julia and
Yep.
Sari as a advertised
Yeah,
factor.
yeah. She wasn't advertised for this one. She was a surprise pick.
Yeah.
I was trying to
So
find
that's pretty.
so many. No,
So to me, no, Marigold doesn't hurt Rossi, but it's not enough to put him on there, basically.
he's another guy. I really went hard to try to find something concrete with him because, like, one of the comments I hear about him all the time is like, there's so much rumors and stuff about him, and nothing really that settled in terms of like, was he the mastermind of the Crush Gals, or was he like the
So yeah,
photographer?
to me, the what we have that would be the case. The rumors or the unsubstantiated things that I've heard is he sort of was the creative director of the Crush Gals, basically, and he booked the interpromotional stuff in the early to mid '90s, which is some of the best promotional stuff ever, really, because Zenjo was willing to lose matches.
Yes, always a
You
hard
know
part
that.
of these interpromotional feuds. The main promotion, will
Yes,
they lose or not?
exactly right, and that's what made it so good because hey, they could actually lose these matches and everything like that. Um, so that's to me, those are the two things that are incredible, and obviously Crush Gals is a all-time big act, and then that's one of the best periods of any company ever, right?
Yep.
You know,
He's another where it feels like the voters and the people that advocate for and against him go so extreme in both ways. It's like, when people were hyping up, it was like, he is the true Vince McMahon of Joshi wrestling, and I was like,
right,
I don't know about that. And then there's other people who are against him. Are like, he never did anything for Joshi wrestling. Like, look at Mario Gold. He's a huge failure. He holds
right,
everyone back. It's like, come on. Like, that's also not accurate. Like a lot of these people that are hating or like going crazy, bigging him up are not being very accurate. So I was digging through all this stuff. I got a hold of a book like Zenjo Ichiban, which was like released in '95. I got a guy from Japan to help me translate it. There's a funny story of Ken Dori and Hokuto getting into a shoot fight backstage once. But like I was trying so hard to find like more substantiated things so I could point to like this is what we know for sure, and it's very hard not being Japanese to do this, is all I'll say. But I did make some ground with it. I think what you said was pretty much the gist of it. You know, he was the creative guy for them and then helped big with the interpromotional stuff. There was some stuff too. He was really big in the home market rather than the live events, and that really hurt Zenjo when they lost. 97 came, and there was so many depths anyway that the company was gonna things were going to go down, but I will say I don't think him around 96, 97 helped AJW either. Like a lot of his ideas. And then like you see the playbook that Mario Gold has, I totally agree with what you said. And if you look at what they're doing, it's basically right out of his prior group's playbooks with JD Star
yeah,
and Stardom, where you had back then you had your experienced legend or whatever in Nanai, like to center the company around. Uh,
yep,
then you had a lot of really green, young, idle type of wrestlers, and with the hope that eventually they would grow, and most of them in Stardom did grow and became great. Uh, but a lot of the roster now is not that dissimilar from what we saw in Stardom at the beginning of that company in 2011 and 2012, and even down to the point of like somebody like a Bozilla like was very similar to the type of people he would bring into Stardom. I mentioned Alpha Female earlier.
yeah,
Back then, a lot of this is just his vision and he's kind of repeating it. We'll see how it goes, because a lot of his ties with RCA, JD, and Stardom, he had mixed results, overall. So we'll have to see. But I definitely don't. I think some people were being a little too. At first, I thought they were like bigging him up too much. Now I think they're a little too hard on him, and I don't think we're getting a very fair representation of what he meant. overall. Uh, so with that
Well,
said,
I think it's
yeah,
yeah. Well, I was going to say it's sort of funny because I think, well, I mean, God forbid if something happened to him and he wasn't able to continue, I don't think Mari Gold necessarily survives. And I feel like in some ways, a big test for him was, can Mari Gold survive without him? And at this current moment, they cannot. I don't think.
yeah, I do agree. Um,
But I don't think that that's impossible in the next couple of years. But we're not at that point yet.
yeah, no, I think that's accurate too, and that's my main point on a lot of people is like, let's see where the next few years takes us because who knows what's going to happen in the world of wrestling by then for all sorts of people. But yeah, I think you did a great job explaining your ballot here. You mentioned everybody, and I we'll see what comes down to on the third for for the Mexican region. What you want to put in there. Ours was pretty similar, I would say. My ballot you had, like I said, all of ours for the non wrestlers were the same. I just kind of swapped George Scott for Koichi, but I think Koichi should be in as
Yeah.
well.
No, I mean, to me, Koichi might be my most out of basically what I hear. I don't know of anyone else that's voted for him or anything like that. I just think, to me, as someone that prizes Japanese wrestling as my favorite type of wrestling and what I really watch the most of, although I've started watching more lucha, I admit. Although going to Arena Mexico has that effect on you. Um, I just feel like I have to recognize him for my, like, it's a very selfish choice almost, and I don't necessarily mean that in a negative way, but it's like I can't imagine my world without
Yeah,
this chain of events, right?
yeah, no, his contributions were like that for not just you, but many, many, many people owe that to his contributions. At the end of the day, it's a very unique case, and I'm in favor of all of that. Like I said, I love that somebody like a Parks or like Jim Johnson are on there. Like I want to see people who are the
Would you
number
ever
one.
are you a Reggie Parks voter or
I mean, he's not in the top 7 for me, but I wouldn't say no to him either. I don't think
yeah?
he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame because I think he's the one that's the best at his. I don't think there's anybody else that's beat him in terms of title decides. So I love cases like that. Like I said, I love seeing people like Ted Boy get on. Uh, I'd love to see Steve Gray get some love because I think he's an amazing wrestler. But I also, in my brain, I also know that there are other candidates that are better than him as well. But we'll see. Overall,
Oh,
though,
and
two more.
I
Yeah, go
think
on.
I would just like to say to anyone listening about going on forward is that in the last couple of years, in part, I think, but not exclusively, uh, because of things that have, and Voices of Wrestling has always been very open to this, but you see more and more people. John Muse just wrote a defense of Sabu in the Last Observer, for example. If you go out and you write something, it can actually move votes. If you write something well and you do your research and you make your arguments clear and to the point and think of perspectives that maybe not be so obvious, you can move votes. And I think that has played a role in people like um, Rougeau and everything like that.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Um, there's just a lot of great legends, and I'm so glad we got to cover all these eras together again because I really don't want, and it's one of my fears actually. I don't know if you feel the same about this. um, One of my fears is that wrestling history is like going down, kind of like in terms of. I think a lot of the newer fans, because there's so much stuff to watch now that's
Hmm.
modern. I don't think they have the same intent of going back the way that I did first started watching wrestling in '09, 2010. I was
Yes,
still
I
a
agree
kid
with
pretty
that.
much then. But the thing is, we weren't getting shows every day to watch back then.
No.
We had extra time to go back and watch the Four Pillars or Rings or Jumbo Saruda or the Destroyer or all these other guys that had great things. The Ditch isn't around anymore. Is his website. Um, You
Well, I'll
know,
say this about the tragedy of the ditch is that we lost all of these great Nobutaka Araya matches.
I think he would agree with that.
I know he
Actually,
agrees with me on that one.
yeah, yes, I am. Yeah, yes, you are totally right about that. That's the worst, I'd say, and also Jun Izumida as well. He was a
Yes.
big fan of his as a wrestler. Um, but the thing is, those kind of resources just aren't there anymore, and with the modern age, again, you could watch five. You know, how many companies are on Wrestle Universe at this
Oh
moment?
God. I'd like to be the person that watches everything on Wrestle Universe.
100% agree. Please DM me and Gerard as well. Let us know if you are that person that watches every single show on Wrestle Universe. Um, but yeah, so it's one of the fears that I have is that like wrestling history will not get treated with the same respect and love that um, you have given to it as a voter. A lot of the voters and even myself, just as somebody who likes wrestling history, like on here, the love that we have for it. I don't want to see it go down because there's so many great new fans that I've met over the years. Again, you know, I've been doing this show 9.5 years. A lot of people have come and gone that were big. Uh, you know, they loved it for a year or two and then they got out. There are some people who were completely insane, and I was glad to see them go, to be honest. Um, but there was a lot also of really, really super smart and intelligent fans of my show, and I'm sure you agree about the Flow Show, the comments you get. These people love
Mhm.
wrestling,
Yes.
and love Japanese wrestling specifically. And I want to see the history continue to live on and people to be willing to check that out, whether it's an old school, you know, a Wild Bull Curry and Johnny Valentine brawl or a Masaki Mochizuki match versus, you know, I remember watching his old matches when I've said it before. Hell, this might even be before your time listening to the Lariat, Gerard, but one of my big entrance ways to Japanese wrestling at the time was K Dojo.
Yes, I
Um,
know. Yeah.
yeah. I one of the first matches I watched of his was him and Taka in '05. And that match really made me love Mochi back then. And that led to DG USA, which led to DG, which led to all of this other stuff. So with history, it's like it can take you to so many different directions and worlds. And I hope people still have a heart and soul for that, even though there is so much modern stuff today. And also because the stuff in the past was also kind of better than a lot of the modern stuff. But that we don't have to
So
say that.
so when are you gonna ask for Taka on the ballot?
I'll send an email let's see what Dave said. Hey, he didn't put on Steve Gray because of me. He had to wait for other people to shout him out.
Well,
Clearly, my
it's
word
funny
does not
because
mean a lot to Dave.
well, I gotta say I will sometimes ask Dave, and I don't have anyone on the top of my head to ask for. So if you have anyone, I'll ask.
Besides Meltzer himself, um,
Yeah.
I think somebody that would be interesting to look at would be a Jun Kasai. That's another style of wrestling with deathmatch, and
Yeah.
he's one of the biggest stars. And we've seen him get a little bit of a bump with this Despy feud being on these New Japan shows. I think he's a guy that would be very interesting to look at his credentials in the
And
deathmatch world.
he's clearly had a influence on like the people doing death matches in the States right now.
Oh, 1,000,000%. Um, I think that somebody else, I forget who I was talking to earlier this month or why this even came up. It may have been Dave himself that said this and I responded. Um, but I know for a fact that, you know, somebody like a Masahiko Kimura, I think deserves another look because he was so influential, not just in the judo scene, and obviously everyone knows him for the double cross that Ricky Dozan had. Me and Royce Isaacs were talking about it on Twitter, which is another cool thing that you could just talk to these guys about random stuff like that. But I think he's a guy that I would look at. I also would really, really appreciate if Kiyoshi Tamura would get another shot at the ballot because I think that he's a big miss for the grand scheme of things, both for wrestling and because of the draw that Rings was with him on top. I would love to see him get another shot. So there's three guys right there. Two that were kind of dropped off. I don't even know why Kimura dropped off because I think he was above 10% most times. And
Was
Tamura,
was Toy Onobori ever on the
Well, I know that
Oh.
Kinch Stalker would want him to be on there, and I respect that. Like that he could make a Hall of Fame on his own, and he'd probably do the best of all of us combined if Cameron made a Hall of Fame of Japanese wrestlers. Like that guy knows so much about wrestling, he puts us all to shame, pretty much historically. But I think that's another guy that'd be really good to look at. He was the top star of JWA for a point. It wasn't long, and he had some issues outside of the ring, but he was a big star, and I think that that's somebody worth looking at and doing some research on. Um, so those are all good candidates to me. I think that there's a lot of guys that, like I said, look at last year, before last year, who would have said, Ted Boy Marino would get a shot on there? Like somebody had to go deep and put these guys on there. And somebody like that. And I think it's really worth watching and looking at. And I think that we can probably try and find some people from Argentina, that wrestler, since we got the Brazilian on. I know that Martin Cardigan is on, and he was like one of the top Argentinian wrestlers as well. So maybe there's some other people because I know that there was a lot of big time stuff going on there in the 60s and 70s. So historical candidates like that I think are interesting, but I think for a more modern one like a Kasai would be good. Who do you think, like, let's look at the modern candidates real quick. Like, is there anybody you think, the problem that would make me afraid of asking people like
Kenta
that is, that's a good one.
Probably think a lot of people would say.
That's a good one. And I was going to say, I would be afraid to ask a lot of these modern guys because we saw what happened with Kento and Sugera and stuff. And I would be afraid to put another guy on. Kenta, I think, has a better shot than those guys. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great candidate.
Your Will Ospreays and your Colt Cabanas will vote for Kenta.
Kenta, my first ever Japanese wrestling match was him versus Marufuji.
There you go.
And anybody can listen to my Must See Matches episode I did. I did a whole show about that very match. I love that match and watch it every single year on my birthday. I've done it every year since I saw it the first time in 2008. So I love that match to death. I love Kenta to death. I hated his run the last 5, 7, 10 years or however it's been. But like I hated all that stuff with a true passion. But I've loved to see him come back this year, and I think that his case has actually gotten a lot stronger, and his legacy's been saved pretty much with this Noah run we've had. So yeah, good picks. Kasai, Kenta, and one of the historical guys. Throw those out there.
What about?
I'll see what I can do.
What do you feel about Go?
He's an interesting guy. I think he's a really interesting candidate. It's going to be tough because a lot of his early career, he was looked at as like a failed champion,
Yeah.
Obviously, the first title reign, that's not really his fault because, it was off of Misawa dying. But it happened,
Where would you put him in the conversation as best worker of the 21st century?
That's a great question.
Because he's up there.
I'd put him. I think he's had a more complete career than Kenta, but I don't think he's had the peaks that Kenta's had. Does that make sense?
Not. Yeah.
I would put him below Sugiura, who I think has had better consistency and peaks. And then, like, who else would there really be in terms of? Okay, who would you put between? Because Go, you got to understand, Go started in the mid 2000s.
Yep.
So it's hard to compare somebody like him and like a Kento, like as a wrestler, because Go has years before Kento really broke out.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think he fares. Oh, now that's a guy that would be interesting to talk about. Hall of Shame.
You can make an argument. He's been you can make one of the best workers for 20 years.
That's true, and he was like the top prospect for like when he came in. He
great from the beginning, and it was great the whole time, even when through everything that's happened.
As insane as he may be, he is a great worker. Like, there's no way you can argue that. I think I would put, because again, like Nakajima versus Kenta, that's a high peak, man. 2009 Kenta and Nakajima. Does Go have any matches better than that? You think? So it's tough, isn't it? It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you this: what's Go's best match? You think that you would say, Dave? These are the 3 matches, or just one match that says Go is an in-ring one of the all-time goats in the ring.
Um,
I think him and Sugiura in his title reign, like near the tail end of that, the December match,
well, since I'm
2020.
on the Eastern Lariat, I'd have to say Go versus Kai.
I love that match. Like that, I love that match. Unironically, I think that is one of his best matches. So yes, we do appreciate that. But then you think about it,
No,
you
I mean
wonder.
he's got the Segura and Nakajima matches from his title reign in 2020, 2021.
Yep.
Um, his match
It's,
against Joe Doring that he won the Triple Crown.
that was great. Him versus
There's stuff
Akiyama
in
in the
Noah that
Carnivals was great too.
yes. There's stuff in Noah that I'm just blanking on.
And that's the thing. I mean, he's had a lot of like a long career when you think about it.
Yeah.
The match he had with Kenta in 2009, when he first became champion, they had it the next month, and it was based off of a random draw. Um, that match was awesome, and I really loved that match a lot. What about the tag he had? It was when he was still young, like a rookie. It was him and Kobashi versus Nakajima and Sasaki.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, that was good. Um, I'm sure he had some matches in All Japan that are just lost to time. I mean, I don't know if that Doring match is available
Well,
online, but that's
there's
worth
a
watching.
there's an Akiyama and Go versus Suwama and Doring tag title match from 2013 that I just think the world of.
Yeah, yeah. See, I love to go back and that's a project I'd love to do, like the Shiraishi era of All Japan.
Well,
Another
so
insane
I
situation, but
did
he
a
was great at it.
I did the first 6 months of All Japan in 2013, basically the Burning Invasion with Alan 4L on his pod.
Oh
So
man,
you could check that out there. Yeah.
yeah,
And
check
we
that out.
watched
That's
those
on Torch,
Champion
right?
Carnival matches. Yeah, we watched those Champion Carnival matches.
Oh man, and were they not
Yeah.
great? Was I
Yes,
wrong
of
when I
course.
said that? Yeah.
No, they were amazing. And we watched some of the junior matches, like the All Asia tag matches. And we watched that tag match with Suwama and Doring versus Akiyama and Go.
Also, I mean, what about the stuff he did in New Japan where he faced Nakamura and Tanahashi?
Yep. Those are really good
Yeah,
matches.
yeah, that was the start of the 2010s. Uh, you know, you had I remember a Go and Hideki match when Hideki was in Noah, like 2019, which is really great. They had. I'd love to go back and watch. I wonder how his Ring of Honor run stacks up because he wrestled some all time greats when he was there.
Yeah, no. I gets overshadowed by Kenta and Morishima, but there was some good stuff in there.
Yeah, and he was still a rookie, so he wasn't even meant to be like a
Yeah.
big guy. He was in like Larry Sweeney, like Inc. Yeah, like so, he
Yeah.
wasn't meant to be a main eventer, but he had some great matches there. People like Brian Danielson. I know Aries was still there. That he wrestled. Uh, I don't think anybody could find the FIP go at this point, but I know he was there a lot.
Yes,
But
he
yeah,
was a champion.
yeah. See, so that's another candidate. Go, Kasai, and Nakajima, I guess, or Kiyoshi Tamura. We'll see what we can do with it next year. But
Well,
one more
and you
question.
said
Yeah.
Nane, and you said Nane
Oh yeah,
earlier.
no, yeah. She deserves it.
Nane.
But
Yeah.
I think it's tough, man, because like these Joshi candidates, will they be able to get in? Like
No,
that's the
I
problem.
don't
Like if
think
Mako's not
I don't
getting
think
in, it's going to be hard.
Satomura would get in, and she's got the best chance.
And that's what worries me a little bit. The only way I can see that changing is if like there was more because I have seen some people dig up 2002 Joshi and drop them on YouTube in a playlist. Like I watched the entire JWP run one day. Somebody just uploaded one day randomly, like 5 months ago, uh, of '02. But if there was that for like that entire period, and somebody just came out and was like, look at all this unearthed Joshi from the 2000s. Maybe we could point people to that and grow people like a Nanae Takahashi, but it's going to be really, really hard, I would say. Or even
Yeah.
Arisa Nakajima. That's somebody who I think deserves to be, surely should be considered one of the best workers of all time.
Well, the thing
In
is, I
my opinion.
think if because I don't know who's even going to be eligible in the next couple of years, but I don't think you're going
Yeah.
to see much. Bet
Yeah,
you
that's
someone
true.
could ask so you could get in and ask because like is someone going to ask for Goto? I think that might happen.
He'd be a really interesting candidate. Obviously, I think he's very underrated historically. Um, and I mean, this year kind of proved it. Like, like he was the first person to actually pop business in a meaningful way in a long time. And it was at a really
And
not good point.
consistency
Yeah.
and his consistency of work since what 2006 2007.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his breakout match with Tanahashi was November '07. And he's
Yeah.
been one of the best ever since then to this day. So I think Goto deserves to be on. And this
If
might
he
be
does, well,
probably the best time.
I don't know if he's ever going to get another title run, but if he does and it pops business, I think I might have to at least get him on the ballot again. you know.
I will do everything in my power to ensure that happens somehow, if that does happen. But yeah, that's interesting when you think about who's next, like of the modern era, so to speak, because we're kind of getting light in candidates. Like at this point, I think he's probably
Well,
the
I
best
mean,
one.
that's connected to what I said before. It's hard to do these comparisons because the business is so much weaker and so many few promotions are drawing anything that you could call Hall of Fame level.
Yes, yeah, there's really not any at this
Right? Like
point.
I'm like, here's the thing. It's like you can't talk to me
Excuse
about
me.
Saya Kamatani until she draws 10K. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I mean, there's other ways you could make that argument, I suppose. But if you wanted a more clear-cut case, some of these current stars, quote unquote, like Kento's never drawn 10,000.
no, even though we
You
like him
know,
a lot, of course.
yeah,
Um,
he peaked at like 6,000 if you believe that, or five maybe. Whatever
oh
those
yeah,
sumo
that
hall shows did.
Yeah, wasn't that the anniversary show where it was like a huge number and we were all like, huh?
No,
Like,
no, the anniversary show. You mean the 50th anniversary show?
was that the one that did like a 6,000 number or something like that? Because I
No,
know
it
which one
did
you're talking about.
4,000. It did 4,000 in Budokan. I'm talking
Even
about. I think it
even
was
then, I'm skeptical.
Suwama versus. I'm thinking Sumo Hall 2016.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm still skeptical of that, so like as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, for sure. But I'm just saying, like, those would be your best Kento draws that have ever been ascribed to him. And I
I
think you sort of
guess
got to give it. I just feel more. I would just feel so much more comfortable, obviously, if
the
some of these
business
guys
was
had these
healthier.
bigger matches. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe Iwatani. I think she might get on
yeah,
like the ballot at
she
least. Yeah.
might. Influence is there and work longevity. Yeah. Okay, here we go. The Sumo Hall card in 2016 drew 65-22 to Sumo Hall. So
There you go. Kento got screwed the ballot last year. But do you think, just looking at this and reading the tea leaves, and do you have kind of a feeling on who will get in this year?
um I think Hayabusa will actually. I
I
think
think he's one of the
Sabu,
stronger chances. Sabu, good pick.
Hayabusa, Sabu, Cody.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think I Punk is hard because I could see it going either way. He
Okay,
doesn't
do
know
you
what
think that
to
at least, because we did
because
agree,
there's going to be a fair amount of observer voters that aren't going to be able to vote for him because they just hate him.
but here's the thing though. Here's the thing, okay? Because we both agree that he is a Hall of Famer, and I hate saying
Yeah.
that, but I agree. Uh, Can we also agree that the funniest outcome would be that he got like 58%?
Oh, it would be hilarious, no question.
Yes. So that's what I'm rooting for, even though I do think he's a Hall of Famer objectively. And that's how you know I'm a good historian because I will look at things objectively.
I think there's room for the Briscoes to sneak in now
I
because
think
guys
that
like Roman are in there.
yep, and that cleared out, because like so many people left. It was like, look at last year. You had Asuka, Kevin Owens, Uso, Sid, Bray Wyatt, Sami Zayn. They all dropped off last year.
Samoa Joe will be interesting.
Yeah, I thought about him too. Like he's another like Takayama kind of candidate for me.
I think he's got a late career boost that Takayama didn't have.
Yep, and that's the difference is that he's like, I mean, I honestly think he's a better promo than a like week to week worker these days. But I mean, we saw in the Darby match that if he's in the right guy, greatness is very much within the grasp of Samoa Joe in the ring.
Yeah.
I think some of the historical guys have a shot. People like Bobby Bruns, I think, is going to have a strong case. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody like a JYD and a June Byers get in. They were both over 50% last year. Like, let me tell you, okay, let me look up the list here. The people who were above 50%, Bobby Bruns had 56, JYD had 53.8, Hayabusa had 53.2. So I agree with you. I think the trend is going that he's going to get in. Ted Turner has 52.5. He'll be an interesting case. Punk had 52, and Jude Byers had 50.4. I think all of those names have a chance to get in. Oh, and Dory Dixon at 53.2 as well.
Yep.
So that's good.
About Hamada, because
Hamada should be in.
do you think he'll get in though?
Mexico's an interesting region.
Are there going to be people crossing over and voting for Mexico just for Hamada?
I don't know. Like the Mexican region's always been a little weird. It's kind of like because that was a problem people had came to me about in years past, like 8-9 years ago. That people were jumping into Mexico to vote for the original La Parca, not the AAA one on now, but just coming in to vote for him and because they liked him at WCW pretty much. And they didn't really know any of the other candidates. And that kind of screwed over a lot of people. Like a Blue Panther should have been in a million years ago, but he was always stuck in the 50s because people were making crazy votes, like jumping in. So I'm glad that people are getting more knowledgeable about it. And I think that we're going to have better candidates in. And I think maybe that'll help Hamada, like the more knowledge that we have. But I think that's about it. It's been 3 hours. I hope you had as much fun as I did talking about
yeah,
this,
of course. I always, just for the sake of opening up the history is always a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I really appreciate you taking the time and talking about all this great history. Hopefully, I held up my end of the bargain as well, and some things as well. I did a lot of research this year just for my own sanity, I guess. I suppose. So hopefully, all you guys listening liked it too. Definitely make sure to check out Emerald Flowshow, especially the episodes I'm on. But actually, all the episodes are good. Gerard, talk to him about it a little bit.
So we cover mostly All Japan and Noah with occasional DDT and Big Japan and even some great. I think I'm going to get a great membership so I can watch Suwama versus Nakajima.
Me too, unfortunately. And, hey, more candidacy for Nakajima's drawing case drew us like 2 people extra late, which is that's like a 50% increase from their usual subscriptions.
Yeah, and of course I always hold out hope that Nakajima will return to All Japan, but but so yeah, we covered that, and then we'll cover whatever else. We've done the fighting detective shows, and then if there's another one that just it's going to air, I think it's going to be put up on Wrestle Universe in a couple of days. So I got to check out a couple of matches on that show and whatever sort of smallerish size men's promotions in Japan come across our radar. We try to get to if it gets some sort of buzz. We're not watching every sleazy indie on the little pay sites, but if it's a promotion you've heard of other than New Japan for men's wrestling in Japan, we will probably talk about it at some point.
As
Except
you
for
should.
sorry.
Oh man. Why did DG have to catch a stray at the end of this?
Well, no, I know
No.
I'm not taking shots at Dragon Gate, but there's also the great Open the Voice Gate that does Dragon Gate.
Yeah, they are great. Like they actually
But
did a great feature last year on Hamada. We just talked about him. They brought a
yes,
Cubs fan who everybody loves, and as they should. Those guys are super knowledgeable on Hamada. That's a great case if you want to hear more about Grand Hamada. Check out their
and
show.
Mochizuki.
And Mochizuki this year, as I hyped earlier as well.
Yep.
So, any DG affiliated guys, they've got it on lockdown for the Hall of Fame
Yeah. Well,
season.
I think Case wants Sasuke back on the ballot.
Let me tell you something. Guess who was the one that suggested that to him last year? When we were in the we were in the PWO thread together, and I was arguing about Fujiwara, and he was mad because people were hating on the DG guys. I specifically said I think Sasuke should be on the ballot, and he agreed with me. And I'm sure he wanted it before my input, to be fair, but I did say it first. Is all I'm saying, and it's public knowledge. Go look to that PWO thread from 2024 on there. So. But yeah, love those guys. Love the Flow Show. You and Paul do a great job. Hopefully everybody checks that stuff out for the Hall of Fame and just for the regular shows that you guys do. You always do great coverage of your promotion. So,
well, it's funny. It's as weird as it sounds. I feel like these podcasts covering Japanese wrestling are more important than ever in the lean years. For someone to at least document some of this stuff.
I agree, and I think that's something that's going to really come to pass the next time we do get into a boom period for whatever that's going to look like. I mean, we can't really foresee it now, but and we were talking about somebody was talking to me about Jay from Jay Church, Dragon Gate's commentator. I was on his side every day back when I started like I Heart DG. We were talking about just a couple weeks ago. Somebody was talking to me about his old podcast that was like a huge. He did like 10 podcasts about the history of Dragon Gate from Toryumon to like 2011 or whatever, like whenever he did it. And those are just lost to history. Like you have to really dig deep. I mean, we did find them eventually, thanks to the help of my friend Ashutosh as well. But those things are just lost on the mainstream way, and they were so informational and so cool. And I'm so glad that now, at least with shows like ours, along with Voice Gate and others as well, that this stuff will be documented to the point where, 10, 20 years from now, the stuff is going to be able to be looked back on from real time perspectives and not just guessing, pretty much like the Dark Ages in some ways. And that really hurt a lot of people that were top guys in the 2000s, whether it was guys or the Joshi wrestlers. They were really hurt because of that. There was no real documentation, especially on the English speaking side. So yeah, you are right. Like that's a great point. I never thought of it that way. But most importantly, though, I do hope we are entertaining to all the fans out there, and maybe even learned a little something today. And I do appreciate everybody taking the time out. As I said, I'm kind of afraid when we do these shows that like I'm kind of going outside the box. Like, people care more about modern stuff, but I do think there are a lot of really knowledgeable historical fans too. So hopefully this did some good stuff for everybody. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And I can't wait to do it all again next year. Maybe we'll do something when the end results come out. If anybody makes it from Japan, maybe you and me can get together and just gloss over the results in real time.
For sure.
I think that would be a cool follow-up to do as well. But like I said, thank you for the time. Super hyped that you got a vote those years ago, and you've used it greatly. And I can't wait to see how all the other voters do their thing too. So everybody check out the Eastern Lariat on Twitter. Check me out at Viva_0. Eastern Lariat also on Blue Sky as well. Striga, check him out on Twitter. We got the patreon.com/Eastern Lariat. All kinds of stuff on there, like thousands of hours at this point of stuff in the past that's documented. So a lot going on, lots of fun to be had, and I can't wait to talk more about it. I can't wait to have everybody back next time. But as always, no matter who gets voted in, no matter who gets dropped off the ballot, no matter if it's a controversial picks or safe picks all around, even if CM Punk gets in the Hall of Fame and makes me unhappy, no matter what, I love you. And until next time, sayonara.
to get your flow. Make this your worst lead like a burning bright sunlight. This trying not to get you lucky, not in vain. Look now, magic hunter, go hands long, go die. Don't give up, no one out, the thing is you're no friend. This fight was fight at the fucking singing night. We're walking through the hell, now shake and raise your head.